The crime of being misunderstood. I was never heard. I spoke. They listened only to what they wanted to hear, not my truth, not my intent, not the weight behind my words, only the echo that fit their comfort. I stood in front of them bleeding meaning, and they called it noise. I opened my mouth to explain, and they closed their minds to judge. I wasn't silent. I was ignored. And there is a difference most people never learn. I was surrounded, yet alone. Seen, yet unseen. Heard, yet never understood. They looked at me and decided who I was before I ever finished a sentence. They carved a story about me with dull knives and called it fact. They labeled me before they learned me, condemned me before they questioned themselves, and every time I tried to speak, I felt it, that wall, that invisible resistance. The moment when eyes glaze over, the moment when listening turns into waiting, waiting for their turn to disagree, waiting for their turn to twist. I learned early that words don't always reach ears. Sometimes they hit armor. Sometimes they hit fear. Sometimes they hit envy disguised as concern. They said, "Explain yourself." So I did, again and again and again. I explained my intentions. I explained my pain. I explained my silence. I explained my anger. I explained my ambition like it was a crime. And every explanation made me smaller. Every justification shaved another piece off my spine. Every attempt to be understood taught them how to misunderstand me better. Because when people don't want the truth, clarity becomes a threat. They didn't want to know me. They wanted to define me, control me, reduce me to something predictable, something manageable. They mistook my calm for weakness, my patience for permission, my restraint for fear, and I let them. Because I believed foolishly that if I found the right words, if I softened the edges enough, if I explained myself one more time, they would finally see me. But tell me this, when has the world ever rewarded honesty without a price? I watched them nod while sharpening their opinions. I watched them smile while deciding my limits. I watched allies turn into spectators, spectators turn into critics, critics turn into executioners with clean hands and dirty mouths. They said, "We just don't understand you." No, you didn't try. You never listened to hear. You listened to respond, to compare, to judge, to win. And slowly, quietly, something inside me started to rot. Not rage, not yet, something worse, doubt. I began to question my tone, my timing, my thoughts, my worth. I replayed conversations alone at night, wondering where I went wrong, wondering which word betrayed me, which pause exposed me, which truth was too much for fragile ears. I carried their misunderstanding like a sentence, like a mark, like proof that I was somehow flawed for not fitting inside their shallow understanding of the world. They never asked how it felt. They never asked why I became quiet. They never asked what it cost me to keep explaining. They just kept taking my words, taking my energy, taking my vulnerability and calling it theirs to judge. And still I spoke. Because I believed silence meant surrender. Because I believed being heard was survival. I was wrong. Being misheard is far more dangerous. Because when they don't hear you, they replace your voice with their assumptions. And assumptions are cruel storytellers. They made me a villain in their heads long before I ever stopped trying to be understood. They feared what they couldn't define. They mocked what they couldn't control. And I stood there holding my truth like a fragile thing, wondering why it kept getting crushed in their hands. This was my crime, not betrayal, not cruelty, not malice. My crime was complexity in a world addicted to simple stories. My crime was depth in a room full of shallow listeners. My crime was refusing to become the version of me that made them comfortable. I was never heard, not because I was silent, but because they never deserved the sound of my truth. The weight of explaining yourself, I explained, like oxygen begged from a room that was already empty. Every day felt like standing trial for simply existing. Every step forward demanded a reason. Every decision needed permission disguised as concern. Why did you do that? Why are you like this? Why can't you just be normal? Questions stacked like chains, so I answered carefully, softly, politely. I learned to trim my truth so it wouldn't offend. I learned to bend my words so they wouldn't threaten. I learned to swallow my fire and call it maturity, and still it was never enough. Explaining became a ritual, a performance, a plea dressed up as logic. I explained my silence. I explained my anger. I explained my ambition like it was a disease that needed a cure. I explained my scars to people who had never bled for anything. I explained my hunger to people who were afraid of wanting more. I explained my boundaries to people who only understood ownership. And every explanation took something from me, because explaining is not neutral, it is not harmless. It is a transaction. You give clarity, they take power. Slowly, quietly, I felt it happening. My voice got thinner, my posture shrank, my certainty eroded. Explaining myself felt like kneeling without touching the ground. I wasn't talking anymore. I was bargaining for acceptance, bargaining for understanding, bargaining for the right to exist without being questioned. Tell me, when did existing start requiring approval? I spoke like someone underwater, words leaving my mouth in slow motion, meaning dissolving before it reached the surface. Talking while drowning, that's what it felt like. You open your mouth to breathe and water rushes in. You try to scream and it costs you air. You explain and the explanation pulls you deeper. I could feel myself sinking with every sentence. I explained because I thought clarity would save me. I thought if they saw my reasons, they would soften. I thought if they understood my pain, they would stop inflicting it. But pain doesn't stop when it's understood. It stops when it's feared, and they didn't fear me. They felt entitled to me. They felt entitled to my time, my energy, my justification. They wanted access to my thoughts like it was public property. They wanted my motives laid out neatly so they could dissect them. And I let them, because I mistook politeness for survival, because I mistook explanation for strength. But every time I explained, I taught them something dangerous. I taught them that I could be pressured, that I could be cornered into clarity, that my truth could be demanded. They learned which buttons to press, which questions to ask, which doubts to plant, and they pressed. And they asked, and they planted, until my own thoughts started interrogating me. I began explaining myself even when no one asked. Preemptive apologies, preemptive defenses. I spoke before I acted, justified before I moved, excused myself for things I hadn't done yet. That's when I knew the damage was deep. Because when you start explaining yourself to ghosts, you're no longer free. I explained my no, I explained my yes, I explained my maybe. I explained my dreams like they needed permission to exist. I explained my limits like they were negotiable. I explained my strength until it sounded like insecurity. I explained, and with every explanation they stood taller, because people who demand explanations don't want truth. They want leverage. They want to hear where it hurts. They want to know where to aim. Explaining gave them the map. They learned where I was uncertain. They learned where I was still hoping to be liked. They learned where I hadn't chosen myself yet, and they used it. They smiled while I spoke, nodded while I bled meaning onto the floor, pretended to listen while deciding nothing I said would ever be enough. Because the truth is brutal and simple. If someone truly wants to understand you, you don't have to beg them. You don't have to drown yourself in words. You don't have to break yourself into pieces small enough to swallow. Understanding doesn't need an interrogation. But I didn't know that then, so I kept explaining, kept shrinking, kept offering my spine as evidence of good intentions. Until one day, mid-sentence, something snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. I heard myself talking, and for the first time I felt disgust instead of hope. Disgust at how much I was giving away. Disgust at how small my voice sounded. Disgust at how I was still trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding me. That was the moment I realized explaining wasn't saving me. It was killing me. Not my body, my edge, my authority, my power, and I didn't stop speaking that day, but something inside me stopped kneeling, something heavy shifted, something patient went cold, and for the first time the silence ahead didn't feel like death. It felt like teeth forming behind a closed mouth. When words became weapons against me, I didn't realize it at first. I thought honesty was armor. I thought truth was protection. I thought if I laid my intentions bare, no one could stab me with them. I was wrong, because the moment I explained myself, they didn't hear sincerity. They heard opportunity. Every word I offered became something sharp in their hands, Every sentence I trusted them with came back pointed at my throat. They didn't listen to understand. They listened to reload. I would speak from the chest, and they would respond from the teeth. I would offer clarity, and they would twist it until it bled a different meaning. That's when I noticed the pattern. My truth never stayed mine for long. I said I was tired. They said I was lazy. I said I needed space. They said I was selfish. I said I was hurt. They said I was dramatic. Truth didn't arrive as truth. It arrived as evidence against me. Every explanation was cross-examined. Every emotion was dissected. Every vulnerability was framed like a confession. They took my honesty and rebranded it as excuses. Excuses for my ambition. Excuses for my boundaries. Excuses for my refusal to play small. They said, "You're just justifying yourself." As if justification were a crime. As if defending your own soul were something shameful. And the worst part, I believed them. I started second-guessing the truth coming out of my own mouth. I wondered if maybe I was weak for explaining. If maybe my pain really was something to be mocked. If maybe my reasons weren't reasons at all, just flaws wearing words. That's how it works. They don't attack you head-on, they make you attack yourself. I watched my words travel across the room and come back distorted. Bent, poisoned, I explained with care. They repeated it with contempt. I spoke with nuance. They responded with reduction. I trusted them with context. They stripped it away and kept only what they could use. And suddenly I wasn't speaking anymore. I was defending my tone, defending my timing, defending my right to feel what I felt. I felt like I was standing naked in a room full of judges who had already decided the verdict. Because honesty doesn't protect you in a world that feeds on weakness. It exposes you. I noticed how they leaned in when I spoke about doubt. How their eyes lit up when I admitted fear. How quickly they stored those moments away, not to help me, but to remember where to strike later. They never forgot my soft spots. They memorized them. And one day I heard my own words coming back to me, but not as I meant them, as accusations. "You said you were unsure. You admitted you struggled. You told us you didn't know." As if growth were a flaw, as if humanity were a liability. That's when confusion curdled into something darker, resentment, because I finally saw it. Honesty wasn't being met with honesty. It was being punished. Every time I told the truth, the cost increased. Every time I opened my mouth, I handed them another blade. They weaponized my transparency. They sharpened my sincerity. They turned my explanations into ammunition. And I kept wondering why it hurt so much. Why speaking felt like stepping into fire. Why being real felt dangerous. Why silence started to feel safer than truth. Then it hit me, like a cold, quiet understanding. They weren't confused. They weren't misunderstanding me. They were using me, using my words to feel superior, using my openness to establish control, using my honesty to justify their disrespect. They never wanted the truth. They wanted leverage, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Every conversation became a battlefield I hadn't agreed to enter. Every question felt loaded. Every "I'm just trying to understand" sounded like a threat. I started speaking less, not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood the price of saying it. My confusion hardened into anger. My anger sharpened into clarity. I stopped feeling guilty for being misread. I stopped apologizing for being twisted. Because if honesty invites attack, then maybe the problem isn't honesty. Maybe the problem is who you're honest with. I realized something dangerous that day. Words don't just communicate. They give access. And I had been handing out keys to people who enjoyed breaking what they entered. That was the moment resentment stopped being poison and started becoming fuel. Because once you know your words can be turned into weapons against you, you learn something far more powerful. You learn when to speak, and when to let silence do the cutting. And they had no idea I was done arming them. The first fracture inside, it didn't break all at once. That's the lie people believe about collapse. They imagine something loud, something dramatic, something obvious. But this happened quietly. It happened after too many explanations, after too many defenses, after too many nights replaying conversations, wondering why I still felt guilty for telling the truth. Constant defense does something to you. It teaches your mind to stay crouched. It teaches your heart to flinch before impact. It teaches your soul that peace is temporary and suspicion is safer. I didn't notice the damage at first. I just felt tired, not physical tired, existential tired. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones and whispers, maybe you really are the problem. That's how self-doubt enters, not as an intruder, but as a suggestion, soft, reasonable, poisonous. They never said I was wrong outright. They implied it, repeated it, framed it as concern. Are you sure? Maybe you're overthinking. I don't think you meant it that way, but... And every but planted another seed. I began questioning instincts that had protected me for years. I began distrusting reactions that were once immediate and sharp. I hesitated where I used to move, not because I was weak, but because I had been trained to doubt myself. That's the real damage of constant defense. You stop standing guard against others and start standing guard against yourself. I caught myself rehearsing conversations that hadn't happened yet, preparing defenses for accusations that might come, apologizing internally before anyone spoke. That's when I knew something was wrong. Because confidence doesn't need rehearsal. Truth doesn't need armor. Yet here I was building walls inside my own mind, piece by piece. I tried to hold on to who I was, but identity doesn't survive untouched when it's constantly interrogated. I felt it splitting. One version of me still believed, still hoped, still wanted to be understood. Another version was growing colder, sharper, tired of bleeding for clarity. They didn't agree with each other. One wanted peace. The other wanted silence. One wanted connection, the other wanted control, and the space between them began to crack. I started wondering who I was when no one was questioning me, who I was without defending my motives, who I was without explaining my existence. And I didn't have an answer. That terrified me. Because when you do know who you are, you become easier to shape, easier to bend, easier to break. They had chipped away at me slowly, not with violence, with doubt, with raised eyebrows, with half smiles. With conversations that ended in me feeling smaller than when they began. I still looked the same, still sounded the same, but inside something had shifted. A fracture, not visible, not dramatic, just a hairline crack running through my certainty. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself this was growth, maturity, patience, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't growth, it was erosion. I was losing pieces of myself not because I was changing, but because I was constantly defending against people who benefited from my confusion. And then came the moment, small, almost insignificant, a thought I never used to have crossed my mind. What if they're right? Not about everything, not even about much, but about me. That thought landed heavier than any insult, because once self-doubt speaks in your own voice, it's no longer an enemy outside, it's an infection. That was the first fracture inside me. The moment my mind cracked just enough for something darker, something older, something patient to start breathing. I didn't become a monster that day. I became capable of one. That was the first crack, and cracks let monsters out. Watching them smile while I bled, it wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the smiles, the calm faces, the soft voices, the way they watched me fall apart like it was entertainment they didn't have to pay for. Friends, mentors. Lovers, different faces, same outcome. They stood close enough to feel my pulse slow, and they never reached for my hand. I trusted them with pieces of me I never put on display. I showed them the unfinished parts, the cracks, the questions, and they leaned in, not to help, to observe. They called it concern, they called it honesty, they called it love. But love doesn't grin when you're exposed. I remember the moment I realized something was wrong. I was speaking carefully, quietly about something that hurt me. My voice wasn't steady, my chest was open, and they smiled, not wide, not cruel, just enough. A flicker, a micro-expression, enjoyment. That's when the room tilted, because pain is private, and anyone who enjoys seeing it is not standing on your side. They asked questions that sounded gentle but cut deep. They waited for pauses, for hesitation, for the tremor in my voice, and when it came, they leaned back, satisfied. I watched friends exchange glances while I spoke. I watched mentors nod while deciding I was weak. I watched lovers grow distant the moment they realized they had leverage. My vulnerability became currency. They spent it freely. Every confession lowered my value in their eyes. Every tear shifted the balance. I didn't see it at first. I was too busy being human, but they saw it. They saw how much power they had over me the moment I needed them. That's when the rules changed. Suddenly, advice turned into judgment. Support turned into tolerance. Affection turned conditional. They spoke to me slower, simpler, like you talk to something fragile you don't respect. I became a lesson, a cautionary tale, a whisper shared when I wasn't in the room, and the humiliation wasn't loud, it was surgical, public enough to sting, subtle enough to deny, jokes at my expense dressed as humor, silences where defense should have been. Laughter that arrived half a second too late to be accidental. They never pushed me into the fire. They watched me walk into it and warmed their hands. That's when I saw the imbalance. I was exposed. They were armored. I was explaining. They were evaluating. I was bleeding truth. They were collecting advantage. And the more I needed understanding, the more power they held. I saw it in their posture, in the way they interrupted me now, in the way they spoke about me while I stood there. They had crossed a line silently, from ally to audience, and audiences don't care if the performer survives. They said things like, "We just want what's best for you." But best for me always looked like smaller, quieter, easier to manage. They loved me most when I was uncertain, when I asked instead of decided, when I doubted myself out loud, because doubt made me negotiable. They never humiliated me directly. They didn't have to. They let me do it to myself. They let me over-explain. Overshare, over-apologize, they stood back and watched. And when I finally noticed, when the weight of it sank in, I felt something colder than pain, clarity. I realized they weren't confused by my suffering, they were entertained by it. They liked knowing more than I did, liked seeing me search their faces for approval, liked the quiet authority of being needed. That's the ugliest truth. Some people don't want you healed, they want you dependent. I saw lovers pull away once they knew my fears. I saw mentors lose interest once they knew my limits. I saw friends go silent once my pain stopped being convenient. And in every one of their eyes, I saw the same thing, relief. Relief that they weren't me, relief that they had the upper hand, relief that my struggle made them feel stronger. That's when humiliation stopped being an event and became a pattern, a cycle. I would open up. They would lean back, I would shrink, they would rise, and still they smiled, because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it grins politely while you come undone. I stood there, stripped of illusion, watching people I trusted enjoy the view. And something inside me hardened, not into anger, into resolve, because humiliation teaches you one thing better than anything else. Who is watching to help and who is watching to feed. I didn't confront them, I didn't accuse, I did something far more dangerous. I remembered. I remembered every smile, every pause, every moment they chose comfort over loyalty. And as I stood there, exposed and silent, with their eyes on me like spectators at a slow collapse, I made a quiet promise. This would be the last time anyone enjoyed watching me bleed. They didn't hear it. They didn't need to. The smile on my face finally returned was not for them. The cost of wanting to be understood, there is a price for wanting to be understood. They don't warn you about it. They don't put it on the label. They don't tell you what it will cost in the end. They just watch you pay it slowly. Day by day, word by word, piece by piece. I didn't collapse from one betrayal. I didn't break from one humiliation. I was exhausted. Not the kind of exhaustion sleep fixes, not the kind rest can touch. This was the fatigue of constant translation. The fatigue of turning thoughts into acceptable shapes. The fatigue of sanding yourself down so others don't cut their hands on your edges. I was tired of explaining my tone. Tired of explaining my intent. Tired of explaining why something mattered to me at all. Do you know how heavy that becomes? When every sentence must pass inspection, when every feeling needs a disclaimer, when every reaction is treated like a liability. I wasn't living anymore. I was managing perception. I woke up already drained because I knew the day would require proof. Proof that I wasn't angry, proof that I wasn't arrogant, proof that I wasn't dangerous. Proof that I deserved to exist the way I was. And the cruel part, I wanted it. I wanted to be understood so badly that I started dismantling myself for it. Explaining stopped being communication. It became erasure. I peeled myself layer by layer, standing there exposed, thinking if I removed enough of myself, they would finally see the core and say, "Oh, now we get you." So I stripped away complexity. I stripped away intensity. I stripped away the parts that made them uncomfortable. I offered softer versions of my truth, friendlier versions of my pain, palatable versions of my ambition, like peeling skin to prove you're real. Look, see, I bleed too, please believe me, that's what I was doing, bleeding on command, and they watched, they always watched. They never reached for the wound, they never said, "That's enough." They just waited to see how much more I'd give. The exhaustion didn't come from being misunderstood. It came from trying to fix it, from carrying the responsibility of other people's ignorance, from believing it was my job to make myself digestible. My voice grew hoarse from saying the same things in different ways. My mind felt heavy, fogged by constant self-monitoring. Am I saying too much, too little, too strongly, not enough? That's not living, that's captivity. And the body knows before the mind admits it. My patience shortened. My tolerance thinned. My silence grew louder. I started feeling anger where there used to be hope, not explosive anger, something slower, denser. Rage. It sat under my ribs like a sleeping animal. Because every time I explained myself again, a part of me screamed, "Why do they get access to this? Why do they get to question your reality? Why do they get to audit your feelings? Why do they get to decide when you're valid?" I was exhausted because I was fighting the wrong battle. I thought the goal was understanding, but the cost was myself. I had become fluent in everyone else's expectations and illiterate in my own instincts. I stopped trusting the first thought in my head, stopped honoring the first feeling in my chest. Everything had to be filtered, approved, justified. That's when rage started to simmer, because something ancient inside me remembered what it felt like to move without permission, to speak without apology, to exist without explanation. And that memory hurt more than the exhaustion. I could feel the pressure building, not outward, inward, like heat trapped under steel. I smiled while explaining, but my jaw tightened. I nodded while agreeing, but my hands curled. I said, "I understand," while something inside me whispered, "No more." They thought my restraint meant compliance. They thought my exhaustion meant surrender. They were wrong. Restraint is not the absence of rage. It is rage waiting for clarity. And clarity was coming, because there is a moment, quiet, dangerous, irreversible, when you realize being understood is not worth being hollow. When you realize that anyone who requires you to erase yourself in order to accept you was never on your side. That realization doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives exhausted. It arrives when you're too tired to keep pretending, too tired to keep peeling skin, too tired to keep bleeding proof. I felt it settle in my bones, a decision forming without words. I would rather be misunderstood than dismantled. I would rather be judged than emptied. And the rage that had been simmering, patient, observant, controlled, smiled for the first time, because it knew something I hadn't fully accepted yet. This wasn't the end of my patience. It was the end of my self-erasure. And once you stop sacrificing yourself for understanding, what rises in its place is not chaos. It's power. The day I realized they never cared there is a moment when confusion dies. Not loudly, not violently. It simply stops asking questions. That day didn't arrive with shouting or betrayal in the open. It arrived with clarity, cold, clean, undeniable. I was still trying then, still explaining, still hoping there had been a mistake. I believed they didn't understand me, that if I found the right words, the right tone, the right timing, something would finally click. I believed ignorance was the enemy. I was wrong, because ignorance looks uncertain. Ignorance hesitates. Ignorance asks. What I saw that day asked nothing. I spoke. Not emotionally. Not defensively. Calm, measured, honest. I said exactly what I meant, and they heard it. I know they did, because their eyes didn't narrow in confusion. They didn't lean forward to understand. They didn't pause to reflect. They smiled. That was it. That small, controlled reaction told me everything, not misunderstanding. Malice. They understood perfectly. They just didn't care. They had always known what I meant. They had always known where I was coming from. They had always known what it cost me to speak, and they used that knowledge against me. In that moment, the fog lifted. Every past conversation rearranged itself in my mind. Every interruption, every dismissal, every "you're too much." It wasn't confusion, it was choice. They chose not to respect me. They chose not to protect me. They chose to benefit from my doubt. I felt sadness first, a quiet grief for the version of me that still believed, for the trust I had given freely, for the effort I wasted trying to be seen. That sadness sat heavy in my chest, but it didn't last, because sadness requires hope, and hope died that day. What replaced it wasn't rage, it was awareness, sharp, focused, emotionless. I stopped looking at them as people who failed me and started seeing them as people who revealed themselves. They weren't cruel because they didn't know better, they were cruel because it worked. It gave them control, it gave them comfort, it gave them power. They enjoyed the imbalance. They enjoyed watching me overthink while they stayed certain, enjoyed watching me bend while they stood still, enjoyed being the standard I kept trying to reach. That's when my posture changed, not physically, internally. I stopped trying to convince them of anything, stopped hoping for understanding, stopped explaining my pain like it was a misunderstanding instead of a consequence. I saw it clearly now. They never wanted resolution. They wanted superiority. They didn't want truth. They wanted positioning, and I had been offering them both. I felt something inside me go still. No shaking, no pleading, no anger boiling over, just silence, the kind of silence that locks things into place. I looked at them and felt nothing, no disappointment, no need, no desire to be liked, just distance. That's when I understood the danger of clarity. Once you see someone clearly, you can never be controlled by who you thought they were. I stopped interpreting their actions generously, stopped making excuses for their behavior, stopped assuming good intent where none existed. I accepted the truth. They never cared, not about my growth, not about my healing, not about my truth. They cared about the version of me that stayed small enough to manage. And the moment I stopped being that, they revealed themselves. I didn't confront them. There was no need. Confrontation is for people who still want something. I wanted nothing. I walked away emotionally long before my body followed. And in that cold awareness, something extraordinary happened. The weight lifted. No more confusion, no more second-guessing, no more self-blame. I wasn't broken, I was targeted, I wasn't difficult. I was inconvenient, I wasn't misunderstood, I was threatening. And the clarity didn't make me bitter, it made me precise. Because when you realize someone never cared, you stop bleeding for them, you stop offering explanations, you stop seeking validation. You stop asking permission to exist. You stop being available. That day didn't make me cruel, it made me awake. And awakened people are dangerous to anyone who survives on their silence. From that moment on, I no longer spoke to be understood. I spoke only when it served me. And when I didn't speak, the silence was intentional, because now I knew the truth. They had always heard me, they just never cared. And once you know that, you don't get angry, you get free. Silence as the first act of rebellion, there comes a moment when you realize words have been doing all the bleeding. Every explanation, every justification, every careful sentence you shaped to make them comfortable. You called it communication, but it was surrender. I didn't stop speaking because I found peace. I didn't fall silent because I felt strong. I stopped because I was exhausted from begging reality to be fair, from translating myself into smaller versions, hoping they would finally listen. I kept thinking if I explained it better, they would understand. If I softened my tone, they would stay. If I proved my pain was valid, they would care. That was the lie, because the truth is brutal and simple. They heard every word, they just didn't respect it. So one day I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue, I didn't defend, I didn't correct the lie placed on my name. I went quiet. And that silence felt wrong, unnatural, like stepping into cold water when your body is used to fire. My chest tightened. My thoughts screamed, speak, fix it, explain yourself, because silence feels like losing when you've been trained to survive by pleasing. Silence feels like weakness when your worth was measured by how much you gave. I sat there unmoving and felt the discomfort crawl under my skin. They noticed immediately. That's how I knew silence mattered. They leaned forward. They filled the space with noise. They asked questions they never asked before, not out of concern, out of control. Because silence disrupts power. When you stop explaining, people lose the version of you they could manage. They lose the script. And that terrified them, but it terrified me too. Because in that silence there was no validation, no applause, no reassurance that I was doing the right thing, just tension, heavy, unresolved, uncomfortable. I wanted to break it, to speak just to ease the pressure. But I didn't. Because for the first time, my silence wasn't fear, it was restraint. I wasn't silent because I had nothing to say. I was silent because they didn't deserve to hear it. That distinction changed everything. Still, I hadn't claimed power yet. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel dominant. I felt exposed, like a warrior without armor standing still while arrows waited in the air. Silence stripped me. No defenses, no performance, no emotional currency to trade, just presence. And presence is dangerous when you're no longer asking to be accepted. They grew uneasy, because silence forces reflection, and people who benefit from confusion fear clarity more than confrontation. I could see it now. Every pause unsettled them, every unanswered expectation irritated them. They were used to my reactions, used to my explanations, used to my emotional labor, and now there was nothing. No supply, no compliance, just a stillness that refused to entertain their narrative. But let me be honest, silence didn't feel powerful. Not yet. It felt lonely, because when you stop explaining, you lose the illusion of connection. You see who was only listening to respond, who was only present to extract, who disappears when you stop performing, and that hurts. Silence shows you how much of your value was tied to your usefulness. I sat with that pain, didn't decorate it, didn't romanticize it, just endured it. Because rebellion doesn't begin with victory, it begins with refusal. Refusal to keep bleeding out loud. Refusal to keep offering yourself as proof. Refusal to keep translating your worth for people invested in misunderstanding you. Silence was my first no, not screamed, not announced, just enacted, and that made it dangerous. I didn't reclaim my throne that day. I didn't feel like a conqueror. I felt like someone standing at the edge of something irreversible. Because once you choose silence, you can't go back to begging. Once you stop explaining, you can't unsee who never listened. The room stayed tense, unfinished. No closure, no apology, no victory speech. Just the awareness that something had shifted, not in them, in me. Silence wasn't the end, it was the beginning. And beginnings are quiet, uncertain, and terrifying, but they are honest. And honesty is the first threat to any system built on your submission. I didn't claim power yet, but I stopped giving it away. And that was enough to make the air tremble. Alone with my thoughts, no witnesses, there is a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes when the noise finally runs out of excuses. No audience, no eyes to impress, no one to blame, just me. And the voice I avoided for years. I used to think isolation was punishment, something inflicted, something survived. I was wrong. Isolation is a mirror that doesn't flinch. No applause here, no sympathy, no one nodding along to my pain, which means there's nowhere left to hide. I don't get to explain myself anymore. I don't get to soften the truth. I don't get to frame my suffering as noble. In this quiet, every lie collapses under its own weight. I see it now. Not the version of me I showed them, not the story I rehearsed to earn understanding. The real one, the one who stayed too long, the one who begged for scraps and called it loyalty. The one who knew the blade was coming and still leaned forward. That realization cuts deeper than betrayal ever did. Because it wasn't just them, it was me. I abandoned myself every time I chose comfort over truth. Every time I swallowed anger to stay accepted. Every time I traded my spine for the illusion of belonging. That's a hard thing to admit when no one is forcing you to. But this is what happens when there are no witnesses. You stop performing innocence. You stop pretending you didn't know. I knew. I always knew. I felt it in the pauses, in the way respect vanished the moment I stopped giving. In the way my value rose and fell based on how useful I was. I felt it. I ignored it. Because awareness demands action, and action demands sacrifice. So I stayed quiet, stayed smaller, stayed agreeable, not because I was weak, because I was afraid of what I would become if I stopped asking for permission. Now there is no permission to ask for, just the truth. And the truth doesn't care about my comfort. It asks questions I can't outrun. Why did you tolerate what you hated? Why did you call it patience instead of fear? Why did you keep explaining yourself to people who benefited from your confusion? There is no answer that feels good, only answers that feel honest. And honesty is brutal when it strips you of your excuses. I sit with the rage now, not the explosive kind, the quiet kind, the kind that simmers beneath your ribs and waits. It isn't loud. It doesn't beg to be released. It watches. It remembers every time I compromised myself to stay loved. Every time I mistook attention for respect. Every time I let someone rewrite my boundaries because I didn't want to be alone. Well, here I am, alone, and I survived it. That realization changes something. Because loneliness stops being a threat once you've faced it without distraction. Once you've sat in your own presence and realized it doesn't destroy you. There is no one to validate me here, which means the validation has to come from within or not at all. And that terrifies the old version of me. The version that measured worth by how needed I was. But this version, this one sitting in the dark with open eyes, is learning something dangerous. I don't need to be understood to be real. I don't need to be liked to be right. I don't need witnesses to choose myself. That knowledge is heavy, because once you accept it, you can never unlearn it. You can never go back to begging. You can never pretend ignorance. Responsibility shifts. If I stay small now, it's a choice. If I tolerate disrespect now, it's consent. And that awareness sharpens the mind into a weapon. I think about everything I suppressed, the anger I labeled as immaturity, the ambition I disguised as arrogance, the instincts I ignored because they made other people uncomfortable. Those parts didn't die, they waited. And now in this isolation, they speak clearly, not with chaos, with precision. They don't demand destruction, they demand alignment. They don't ask me to become cruel. They ask me to become honest. That's the most dangerous shift of all, because honesty doesn't negotiate. It doesn't soften its edges. It doesn't apologize for existing. It simply is. I'm not healed here. This isn't redemption. This is confrontation, me standing face to face with everything I buried to survive a world that never intended to protect me. And I don't look away anymore. I study my flaws, my patterns, my hunger for approval. I don't judge them, I understand them. Understanding is power, because once you see yourself clearly, others lose the ability to define you. Manipulation dies in the presence of self-awareness. I feel it settling in now, not peace, clarity, cold, sharp, unromantic, the kind that doesn't ask how things feel, only what must be done. There is no victory here, no anthem, no declaration, just a quiet decision forming beneath the surface. A line being drawn that no one else can see yet. Isolation didn't weaken me, it stripped me. And what remains is something leaner, something truer, something that no longer needs an audience to exist. This is not the rise, this is the descent. The moment before the transformation when the old self finally understands it cannot come with me. No witnesses, no justification, just resolve taking shape in the dark. And when I step back into the world, I won't explain what changed. They'll feel it. They always do. Meeting the parts of me I hid I've been hiding. Not from them, not from the world, from myself. There are parts of me that never made the speeches, never rehearsed the lines, never begged for approval. I buried them, kept them in the dark, told myself they were dangerous, told myself they were wrong, told myself the world wasn't ready for them. I was a careful performance, a curated version of chaos I allowed. Safe, polite, digestible. But under the surface, under the smile, the nod, the explanations, something waited, something raw, something impatient, something dangerous. I call it the shadow self, the part I hid, the part I called cruel, the part I called greedy, ambitious, irredeemable. I avoided it for years, pretended it didn't exist, told myself it would consume me if I acknowledged it. But here in the silence, alone with no witnesses, I see it. And it doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't apologize, it only waits. Rage, it curls in my chest like a living thing. Silent, patient, watching, ready to explode at injustice, at weakness, at lies. Ambition. The hunger that refused to die even when I tried to starve it with compromise. The fire that reminded me I was capable of more than anyone ever wanted to give me credit for. Hunger. The gnawing, insatiable desire to rise, to take, to own every bit of the world I was told I didn't deserve. Cruelty. The part that recognizes weakness in others and feels no pity. The part that understands power and wants it entirely for itself. I look at these parts of me and I feel what I feared most. They are not evil. They are me, all of me. I thought they would scare me. I thought they would be impossible to reconcile. I thought facing them meant losing the last shred of control. I was wrong. They are the truth I've been avoiding, the raw material of who I was meant to be. The energy I diluted, disguised, and denied for the comfort of others. I sit with them, I stare, and I feel like I am looking into a broken mirror. Each shard shows a different reflection. One shard, rage, burning and sharp. Another shard, ambition, tall, relentless, unbending. Another shard, hunger, hungry and infinite. Another shard, cruelty, beautiful, unapologetic, terrifying, all fragments of the same whole, all fractured, all incomplete alone, but together they are clarity. I reach into the mirror, touch a shard, and it bites, not painfully, not destructively. It awakens. I feel the pulse of it, the life of it. The energy I've been starving by hiding, by explaining, by begging for understanding. I acknowledge it, not to tame it, not to justify it, not to please anyone. I acknowledge it to remember I exist. I am fire and shadow. I am hunger and cruelty. I am ambition and rage, and I am the only one allowed to measure it. I've spent years fearing that acknowledging these parts would make me monstrous. But the real monster was the version of me that bent, explained, and compromised itself to fit the shapes other people demanded. This shadow self does not demand kindness, does not demand validation, does not beg, it commands, it waits, it tests, it refuses to shrink. I realize now that every time I suppressed it, I created weakness in its place. I created hesitation. I created self-doubt. Every time I denied it, I lost a fragment of my power. And that loss taught me fear, taught me restraint, taught me submission. I look at the shadow self again, and I stop trembling. Because I understand something essential. This is the part I cannot negotiate with, the part I cannot hide from, the part I cannot abandon if I want to survive, truly survive. I embrace it, not gently, not softly, but fully. Rage flows into clarity. Ambition sharpens into strategy. Hunger becomes purpose. Cruelty transforms into precision. I am no longer afraid of the parts I hid. I am afraid only of pretending I can live without them. I touch another shard in the mirror. The reflection fractures again. Different angles, different light. Every angle is a truth. Every light exposes power. Acceptance is not peace. It is recognition. It is alignment. It is understanding that to claim your strength, you must first claim the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. And here is the terrifying truth. Once you meet the shadow self, you cannot unsee it, you cannot unclaim it. It waits for you to step fully into its existence. It tests your courage, it tests your conviction, and if you succeed, if you meet it with honesty and embrace it without apology, you gain what the world will never give freely, absolute power. I am learning to stand in that mirror, to face every shard, every fracture, every shadow, and feel nothing but alignment. No guilt, no shame. No restraint imposed by fear of judgment. Only truth, only recognition. I was forged in silence. I was strengthened by isolation. And now I am meeting the parts of me I hid. And when I step out of this mirror, I will never shrink again. I will never apologize again. Because the shadow self is not a threat. It is the engine, the hunger, the fire. The parts of me I hid are the parts the world feared, and the world feared them because they feared me. And now I finally meet them on my terms. The fragments are mine, the shards are mine, the fire is mine, and I am whole, not gentle, not restrained, not small, whole. Pain stops asking for permission. Pain doesn't ask, it doesn't knock, it doesn't wait, it doesn't care about your plans, your dreams, your excuses. It comes, relentless, uninvited, and it doesn't negotiate. I used to plead with it, beg for mercy, wish it away, explain it, justify it, rationalize it. I spoke, it laughed, I explained, it hit harder, I begged. It returned, and I learned. Pain doesn't apologize. Pain doesn't respect boundaries. Pain doesn't ask, why should I? I'm done kneeling, done explaining, done asking for consent to exist. Pain became my teacher, my forge, my weapon. Every wound, every betrayal, every humiliation was a hammer striking the metal of me. I used to wear it like a chain, like evidence of weakness, proof I couldn't survive. Now I wear it like armor, a warning, a declaration. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I refuse the victim story, the apology for surviving. The soft, polite version of rage. I am the fire now, the storm, the weight of consequences they never considered. Every insult, every betrayal, every cut fueled me, not to hate blindly, not to collapse, but to rise. Pain sharpens, pain teaches, pain drives. I've carried it long enough. I've let it whisper, control, dictate. I've let it beg me for approval, permission, acknowledgement. No more, I step into it. I don't flinch. I don't negotiate, I don't ask, it fuels me. I turn it into power, into ambition, into precision. I am no longer broken, I am honed, refined, dangerous. Victimhood dies when you recognize it for what it is, a choice, and I refuse to choose it. Pain doesn't wait for me to be ready, so I will not wait to fight. I will not wait to act. I will not wait to take what is mine. I walk through fire. I carry scars like banners. I wear rage like a crown. Pain didn't ask. Neither will I do not ask for their understanding. I do not seek their approval. I do not offer my weakness for inspection. I am mine. Every wound, every betrayal, every humiliation has been fuel. Every scar, every fracture, every doubt has been transformed into momentum. I do not negotiate with suffering. I do not wait for permission from the world to rise. I do not shrink to appease. Pain stops asking. I stop bending. I stop pleading. I move. I strike. I reclaim. Pain is the engine. I am the driver. I refuse to kneel before it. I refuse to kneel before them. I refuse to kneel before a world that never asked if I could stand. I stand, tall, unapologetic, unbroken. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I. The old version of me would have whispered, wait, be careful, don't push too far. The new version of me answers with silence, then action. Rage flows through me. Hunger guides me. Ambition sharpens me. I do not fear the consequences. I do not fear the resistance. I do not fear the judgment. I am forged in the fire of what hurt me most. I am sharpened by every attack, every betrayal, every unearned humiliation. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I, and with that realization, the world stops being an obstacle. It becomes the proving ground, the arena, the place where the fire I carry turns into dominance. I don't wait. I don't beg. I don't explain. I rise. I act. I claim. Pain didn't ask. Neither will I am no longer the one who bends. I am the one who commands, the one who breaks expectations, the one who decides when the world bends to my will. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I, and from this day forward, that is my law, my declaration, my revolution. No more permission, no more compromise, no more restraint. Pain stops asking. And so do I, the death of the apologetic version of me. I remember her, the one who whispered, I'm sorry, before she spoke her truth. The one who bent, who begged, who twisted herself into shapes others demanded, even when those shapes cut her apart. She was polite, she was careful, she was small. She survived by hiding her claws, by dimming her fire, by kneeling before the judgment of the world. She is dead. I burn her memory. I set fire to the apologies I gave to make others comfortable, to the explanations I offered as if survival required permission. I hold the flames high. I watch the smoke curl into the sky, carrying the fragments of fear, weakness, and hesitation. This is her funeral. I do not cry. I do not weep for what she was. She was necessary once, a shadow that protected me from the world's cruelty. But the world does not reward shadows. It feeds on them. It twists them. It breaks them. And I refuse to be broken. I lay her on the pyre of my choices, the rubble of compromises, the ashes of my suppressed rage. Every sorry she offered, every bow, every moment she waited for permission to exist, turns to smoke. She deserved a gentle burial, a quiet remembrance, a soft goodbye. But I am not gentle, I am not soft, I am fire. She dies screaming apologies no one asked for. She dies begging for understanding she will never receive. She dies so I can rise. I step back from the flames, watch her form shrink, watch her voice dissolve, and I feel a strange liberation. No more innocence. No more hesitation. No more apologetic chains. I am not her anymore. I am everything she feared in herself. Everything the world feared in me. I close my eyes and see the funeral procession of every self I once offered to survive. Each one burning, each one dissolving, each one necessary to become the one who stands here now. The wind carries the smoke away, and with it the doubts, the timid fears, the endless, quiet need to justify. I am heavy with rage, light with clarity. I am full with ambition, hungry for the fire I almost denied. The world will see me now. Not the one who bends, not the one who pleads, not the one who whispers apologies into the void. I am the storm that answers with action. I am the shadow that takes, the fire that burns, the clarity that commands. Every apology I gave, every compromise I swallowed dies here. I will not resurrect her. I will not dig her from the ashes. She is gone. And in her death I am born, born without hesitation. Born without permission, born without restraint. I am no longer the soft voice. I am the roar, I am the teeth, I am the storm. The apologetic version of me is gone, and the world will learn quickly what rises from fire cannot be tamed. I feel it in my bones, I taste it on my tongue, I know it in my blood. This is my rebirth. This is my declaration. This is my vengeance. The ashes swirl around me. They do not bind me, they lift me. I step through them, and every step is a promise. I will not shrink. I will not soften. I will not ask for permission. She is dead. And I am alive, alive with fire, alive with hunger, alive with power. The world wanted her quiet. The world wanted her small. Let it mourn her. I will not. I will rise. I will claim. I will take. I am no longer apologetic. I am relentless. I am the reckoning, and I will never look back. Power was never given. It was taken power. Power is a myth they tell to keep you obedient. They say it is earned. They say it is granted. They say it is a reward for patience, for obedience, for waiting. Lies. I've learned differently. I've watched the world hand out titles, respect, influence, and watched the strong bend their knees, hoping someone notices, hoping someone cares, hoping someone will decide they are worthy. They never will. Power is never given. Power is never asked for. Power is seized, snatched, taken. I understood this slowly. Like a poison creeping through my veins, first as confusion, then as anger, then as an undeniable truth. Every time I explained myself, every time I justified my choices, every time I begged for understanding, it was framed as weakness, submission, surrender. I gave them the chance to label me, to control me, to dismiss me. And every time I bent, they took a little more of my time, my energy, my will. I realized the game was never about fairness. The rules were never equal. The scales were never balanced. The world does not wait. The world does not care. The world does not forgive. And in that revelation, something inside me shifted. I stopped asking. I stopped explaining. I stopped begging for approval. Power does not come to those who wait. It comes to those who take it. I took a moment to look around at those who smiled while I stumbled, at those who whispered while I roared, at those who claimed superiority while I bowed. And I realized their power was an illusion, a borrowed authority, a fragile construct built on fear, compliance, and their illusions of control. I could take it. I would take it. It is mine for the taking, not granted, not begged for, not handed over on a silver platter. I began to see the patterns, the way influence was hoarded, the way obedience was demanded, the way silence was treated as consent. I stopped waiting for permission. I stopped hoping for approval. I stopped caring if they noticed. And in that moment, I understood what it meant to be truly powerful. Power is action. Power is decisiveness. Power is relentless pursuit. Power is fearlessness. Power is knowing the world will resist and doing it anyway. I stopped asking for approval. I stopped pretending they understood me. I stopped playing their game. I created my own rules. I claimed my space. I drew my line, and I crossed it with fire in my veins. Every apology I had ever whispered was replaced with resolve. Every doubt that had ever clouded my mind was replaced with certainty. Every hesitation was replaced with momentum. They say patience is a virtue. I say patience is a trap. Waiting is weakness disguised as wisdom. Explaining yourself is surrender masquerading as understanding. Seeking permission is slavery in polite clothing. I would no longer play by their rules. I would no longer let their judgments define me. I would no longer kneel for scraps of recognition. I took power, every stolen moment. Every hidden advantage, every misstep they thought would break me, I transformed it into dominance. I transformed their underestimation into my advantage. I transformed every attack into fuel. The voice inside me, the one that trembled with fear, that begged for approval, that flinched before judgment, was silenced. I replaced it with authority, with conviction, with certainty. Power was never given. It was never waiting in the shadows for someone worthy to claim it. It was there, but only for those who dared. Only for those who refused to bow, only for those who chose to take it. I chose, I took, and now I stand unshakable, unapologetic, unbound. The world will learn that power is not offered, it is seized. It is stolen from the hands of those who believe they own it. I do not ask, I do not plead, I do not wait, I act, I claim, I dominate. Power was never given. It was mine the moment I decided it would be. No one else can grant it. No one else can take it. No one else can stop me. I am power. I am the storm. I am the reckoning. The world taught me rules. I shattered them. The world demanded obedience. I refused. The world whispered, wait. I acted. Power is not a gift. Power is not an invitation. Power is the consequence of daring, of claiming, of refusing to be silenced. I will not wait. I will not bow. I will not surrender. I am power. And it was never given because I have always been willing to take it. Silence is not weakness, it is control silence. They thought it was my weakness. They thought it was the quiet before surrender. They thought it meant I could be manipulated, bent, understood, controlled. They were wrong. Silence is not empty. Silence is not absence. Silence is a weapon. Every word I once wasted, every explanation I offered, every apology I whispered, all of it fed them. It fed their judgments. It fed their assumptions. It fed their power over me. I stopped. I stopped speaking to justify myself. I stopped explaining to earn their approval. I stopped answering the questions they asked because I realized they were never listening. Every question was a trap, every inquiry a test of obedience, every demand for my explanation a way to weaken me. So I went silent, and in that silence I gained everything. I watched, I waited, I observed, I let them reveal themselves, the arrogance of their assumptions, the fragility of their confidence. The hypocrisy of their words. Every time they spoke, every time they tried to provoke a response, they were exposing themselves. Every accusation, every judgment, every sneer, it became a mirror showing exactly what they feared in me and what they denied in themselves. Silence is control. Silence is patience. Silence is power. The quiet is louder than any roar. The pause is sharper than any blade. The absence of response is the most effective strike. They try to fill the void. They talk. They speculate. They misinterpret. And in doing so, they hand me the advantage. I do not need to fight their battles with words. I do not need to justify my existence. I do not need to explain my intentions. Because the world will reveal its own flaws if you are willing to wait, if you are willing to remain unshaken, if you are willing to be still. They mistake silence for submission. They mistake patience for fear. They mistake observation for weakness. Let them. Every misjudgment, every presumption, every attempt to corner me, it is my weapon now. They give me strategy. They give me insight. They give me dominance without lifting a finger. Silence forces them to reveal the truth about themselves. The truth they hide behind charm, politeness, and laughter. The truth they try to disguise as power. And when they expose it, I do not strike immediately. I wait. I let the tension build. I let them reveal more. I let their own arrogance and greed betray them. They will always make the first mistake. They will always speak before they understand. They will always underestimate the quiet. Silence is not passivity. Silence is action without noise. Silence is the calm before the storm. Silence is the hand that holds the sword but waits for the perfect moment to strike. I have learned that words can be turned against you, that explanations can be twisted, that apologies can be used as chains, but silence cannot be turned. Silence cannot be manipulated. Silence cannot be stolen. It belongs to the one who commands it. It belongs to the one who wields it. It belongs to me. And the beauty of it is, while they flail and stumble, while they misjudge and misinterpret, while they grasp at shadows and whispers, I am already winning. Every word I do not speak becomes a weight they cannot lift. Every pause becomes a trap. Every refusal to react becomes dominance. They think I am afraid. They think I am weak. They think I will bend. Let them think. The more they speak, the more they reveal. The more they reveal, the more I understand. The more I understand, the more I control. Control is not given. Control is not asked for. Control is claimed. Claimed in silence. Claimed in patience. Claimed in the quiet confidence that no one else can dismantle. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not hesitation. Silence is dominance. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them try to push me, provoke me, corner me. I will remain still. I will remain calm. I will remain untouchable. For every word they waste, I gain clarity. For every argument they wage, I gain strategy. For every attempt to provoke me, I gain control. Silence is my fortress. Silence is my weapon. Silence is my crown. They have no idea what I am building. They have no idea how sharp my focus is, how patient my strategy, how inevitable my victory. I do not need to speak. I do not need to explain. I do not need to justify. They do it for me. And when the time comes, when I choose to act, they will not see it coming. They will not understand it. They will only feel the consequences. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not absence. Silence is control. And I am in command, always. I am patient. I am calculating. I am untouchable. The world speaks. I remain silent. And in that silence, I am already victorious. I don't owe anyone clarity. I used to believe I had to explain myself, that my thoughts needed translation, that my silence required permission, that my choices demanded justification. I was wrong. They trained us to believe clarity is a debt, that we owe the world an explanation for our existence, that we must soften our edges so others can touch us without bleeding, that we must make ourselves understandable to be acceptable. I reject that lie because clarity is not kindness. Clarity is exposure, and exposure has always been a tool of control. Every time I explained myself, they didn't seek understanding. They sought leverage. Every detail became a weakness. Every truth became a weapon. Every confession became a chain, so I stopped giving them access. Understand this: the moment you detach from validation, you become dangerous. The moment you no longer need approval, you become free. They panic when they can't read you. They grow restless when they can't define you. They become hostile when they can't predict you, because clarity gives them power. And ambiguity takes it away. I don't exist to be understood. I exist to be unstoppable. Look at how desperate they become when you stop explaining. Look at how angry they get when you don't reassure them. Look at how small they sound when you no longer defend yourself. They demand clarity because it comforts them, because it helps them categorize you, because it lets them decide how much respect to give you. I refuse. I owe no one comfort. I owe no one closure. I owe no one truth. Say it again. Let it settle. I owe no one comfort. I owe no one closure. I owe no one truth. My inner world is not public property. My intentions are not a press release. My silence is not an invitation. If they misunderstand me, good. If they misjudge me, even better, because confusion keeps them cautious. Uncertainty keeps them distant, and distance keeps me in control. I have learned that clarity is often demanded by those who fear what they cannot predict, by those who need reassurance to feel safe, by those who collapse when they don't have answers. That is not my burden. I will not shrink my complexity to ease someone else's anxiety. I will not reveal my motives to satisfy someone's curiosity. I will not soften my silence to make others comfortable. Comfort is a luxury, and not everyone deserves it. They ask questions disguised as concern. They seek explanations framed as care. But underneath it all is the same hunger: control. Control over how you think. Control over how you act. Control over how you are perceived. I severed that leash. Now they speculate, they whisper, they project their fears onto my silence. Let them. Their assumptions are not my responsibility. Their discomfort is not my problem. Their confusion is not my concern. I don't owe anyone clarity. I owe myself alignment. Alignment with my strength. Alignment with my instincts. Alignment with the version of me that no longer begs to be seen. The strongest people in history were never fully understood. They were misunderstood, feared, labeled, and still they moved forward. Silence is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your time, you reclaim your power. No more defending, no more justifying, no more proving. Let them wonder, let them guess. Let them be wrong. I owe no one comfort. I owe no one closure. I owe no one truth. I owe myself peace. I owe myself freedom. I owe myself power. And power does not ask to be understood. Power simply exists. I walk without explanations now. I speak without permission. I choose without guilt. And the silence I leave behind, it unsettles them. Good, because the moment you stop explaining, you stop being available for manipulation. You stop being easy to predict. You stop being small. They may never understand me. That is not a failure. That is my advantage. I don't owe anyone clarity. I owe myself dominance. The moment the world felt smaller, there is a moment. A single crystalline moment. When the world, your world, shrinks and you grow, it comes quietly at first, a flicker in your chest, a tightening in your jaw, a whisper of recognition. I am not small. They do not notice it. They cannot. Because in their eyes I am still contained, still limited, still digestible. But something has shifted. I can feel the space around me bending, the edges of reality recalibrating. The walls that once hemmed me and now recoil. It is the world that has grown smaller, not me. I am taller than I have ever been, sharper, cleaner, unapologetically expansive. Look at them. They are smaller now. They scurry where they once strode. Their voices are timid. Their gestures are timid. Their eyes are wide, not with wonder, but with calculation. And I see it. The predator inside me flexing, hungry, patient, waiting. It is subtle at first. A glance across a room, a word spoken and weighed. A pause just long enough for them to feel it. A predator's patience, a predator's precision. They begin to shrink further. I see them compressing into the corners they once dominated. They measure every step. They hesitate, they falter. I am everywhere and nowhere. I exist in the spaces they can't touch. I exist in the thoughts they cannot claim. I exist in the tension before the storm. It is intoxicating, not because of cruelty, though it tastes sweet, but because of clarity. Because now I know the rhythm, the cadence of power, the tempo of fear. I move differently. They cannot anticipate me. Every step is deliberate. Every breath is mine alone. I do not compete. I dominate by absence, by presence, by choice. They do not understand this. They think size is measured in their terms, in possessions, in numbers, in applause. I measure it differently. I measure it in silence, in patience, in control, in the chilling calm of knowing the world itself bends to your will. They look at me now and see a void, a predator in repose, a shadow in daylight, and they do not know whether to flee or stay, because in that moment clarity is theirs and yet belongs to me. The world contracts around them. Every room feels smaller. Every opportunity feels thinner. Every word they speak feels lighter. I fill the space. I fill it with weight. I fill it with intention. I fill it with presence so absolute that it does not ask for permission. It simply exists. I do not move fast. I do not need to. The predator does not chase blindly. The predator waits. The predator watches. The predator owns what others cannot even comprehend. They try to push back. They try to occupy ground. They fail, because I am already there. In every shadow they cannot command. In every pause they cannot fill. In every thought they cannot quiet. And in this I understand. The predator is not the one who strikes first. The predator is the one who makes the world small enough that no one else can move without you noticing. The predator is the one whose patience is a weapon, whose silence is a strategy, whose calm is a promise. I do not roar, I do not lunge, I do not bend my will to the chaos of others. I exist, I expand, I dominate without a touch. The room tightens, the streets tight. The very air contracts under the weight of presence, and yet I am light, unfettered, immovable, and fluid all at once. They whisper my name, they speculate, they guess, they overreach, but I remain unmoved, because the predator does not answer to curiosity, the predator does not flinch at fear, the predator simply is, and in that quiet, in that stillness, I smile, not a human smile, but something colder, something aware, something infinite. The world shrinks, they shrink, and I am everywhere. No one moves without me noticing. No one acts without consequence. No one dreams without me in the periphery. I do not revel in their fear. I simply acknowledge the truth. The moment they cannot contain you, the moment they cannot predict you, the moment the world itself feels smaller, that is power. Not given, not borrowed, not demanded, taken, and I take it quietly, without fanfare, without haste. Because the predator does not announce itself, it waits, it observes, it exists. Chillingly calm, absolutely patient, unquestionably dominant. This is the moment when the world contracts, when others falter. When you recognize yourself as more than flesh and bone. You are a force, a presence, a predator in a cage of shrinking men and women, and the cage is theirs. The power is yours. I breathe. The world is smaller. They are smaller. And I am endless. No one dares to move first. No one dares to speak. No one dares to cross the invisible line, because I am still quiet, still watching, still complete. And in that stillness, I understand the final truth. The world is only small if you make it so. And I do not need applause, I do not need acknowledgement, I do not need witnesses, I am the predator. The world has shrunk to my gaze, and in this I am infinite, chillingly calm, unmovable, unquestioned, untouchable. The moment has arrived, and I remain 17. I stopped explaining, and they panicked. There was a time I explained myself. Every decision, every silence, every scar. I translated my intentions into language small enough for them to digest. I softened the truth so it wouldn't cut. I bent my spine into question marks so they could feel tall. That time is dead. The moment I stopped explaining, something fascinating happened. They laughed at first. Mockery always comes before fear. They mistook my quiet for confusion. They mistook my stillness for surrender. They mistook my restraint for weakness, and I let them. I watched them grow comfortable, too comfortable. I watched them talk louder, interrupt more, reach further than they were allowed. I watched them mistake access for power. Then I stopped responding. No defense, no clarification, no justification. Silence, not empty silence, not wounded silence, weaponized silence, and that's when it began. At first, they leaned in. They tried to provoke me. They asked questions disguised as accusation. They threw words like stones, waiting for the splash. Nothing. I gave them nothing. No emotional reaction, no visible frustration, no explanation to argue with, and you could feel it. The subtle tightening in their voices, the way their confidence began to stutter, because people don't fear what they understand. They fear what refuses to explain itself. When you explain, you offer handles, places to grab, angles to attack, cracks to pry open. When you stop explaining, you become a wall, smooth, cold, unscalable. They circled me, testing, probing, waiting for the old version of me to reappear. The one who needed to be understood, the one who needed to be liked. The one who needed permission. He never came back, and panic crept in quietly. You could see it in their eyes. The way mockery drained out and was replaced by something sharper, something uncertain. Fear doesn't announce itself. It leaks through nervous laughter, through over-explaining, through sudden politeness where arrogance once lived. They started talking more, filling the silence I refused to occupy, explaining themselves, defending positions I never attacked. That's when I knew. The power had moved. Silence does that. It inverts the dynamic. The one who speaks seeks approval. The one who stays quiet decides whether it's granted. I watch them unravel, not dramatically, not all at once, in fragments, a glance too long. A sentence corrected mid-word, a joke told twice because it didn't land the first time. They needed reassurance, and I wouldn't give it. I didn't glare, I didn't threat, I didn't posture, I listened. Listening is dangerous when you no longer need to be heard. Every word they spoke revealed something. Every attempt to bait me exposed a weakness. Every demand for clarity betrayed their dependence on it. They needed me predictable. They needed me reactive. They needed me explainable. I became none of those things, and the fear deepened, because now they didn't know where they stood. They didn't know what I wanted. They didn't know what I was planning, if I was planning at all. Uncertainty is torture to those who crave control. They tried authority next. Rules, norms. Expectations. You should say something. You owe an explanation. This isn't how it's done. I said nothing, and in that nothing their authority evaporated, because authority without obedience is theater, and I had left the audience. They began watching me instead of mocking me, measuring, calculating, replaying old interactions, searching for patterns that no longer existed. I had changed the game by refusing to play. You see, explaining is a submission ritual. It says your understanding matters more than my intention. It says, judge me, I'll wait. I stopped waiting. And when you stop waiting, others start chasing. They chased clarity. They chased reassurance. They chased the comfort of knowing where they stood with me. I denied them all of it, not out of cruelty, out of precision, because power isn't loud. Power doesn't argue. Power doesn't plead its case like a defendant begging for mercy. Power decides. The moment they realized I no longer needed their agreement, the room changed. Not physically, psychologically, every conversation tilted, every interaction felt off balance, like standing on a floor that no longer obeys gravity. They hesitated before speaking. They chose words carefully. They waited for reactions that never came. And that waiting broke them, because silence forces people to confront themselves. And most of them don't like what they find there. They projected. They accused. They imagined intentions darker than the truth. Good. Fear fills the gaps silence creates, and fear is a far more effective teacher than explanation ever was. I didn't need to assert dominance. It asserted itself. I didn't need to announce the shift. They felt it. In the way they lowered their voices, in the way they sought my approval without admitting it, in the way mockery never returned, only caution. That's when I understood something irreversible. The moment you stop explaining, you stop being managed. You stop being negotiated with. You stop being controlled by other people's expectations. You become an unknown variable. And unknown variables terrify systems built on predictability. They panic because they lost access. They panic because the old rules no longer applied. They panic because the version of me they understood was gone, and I let the panic breathe. I didn't rush to resolve it. I didn't soothe it. I didn't correct their assumptions. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them reveal themselves in the absence of my explanation. Every reaction told me more than any conversation ever could. This is what happens when you outgrow the need to be understood. This is what happens when you realize clarity is a privilege, not a right. This is what happens when you stop handing people the map to your mind. They call it cold. They call it arrogant. They call it dangerous. They're right, because the moment I stopped explaining, they stopped laughing. They stopped pushing. They stopped feeling safe. And safety was the only power they ever had over me. Now the silence belongs to me. The fear belongs to them. And the shift is permanent. Watching them guess, watching them break, I didn't have to touch them, didn't have to threaten, didn't have to raise my voice or sharpen my words. I only had to stop feeding them answers. And they did the rest themselves. You see, most people survive on certainty. They need labels. They need explanations. They need to know where they stand so they can pretend they're safe. I took that from them. I became quiet where they expected noise, still where they expected reaction, unreadable where they expected access, and they began to guess. At first it was subtle, side glances, hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room, questions asked by people pretending they weren't afraid of the answers. They tried to decode me like a puzzle, but puzzles imply rules, patterns, logic. I gave them none. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure, and pressure reveals fractures. They started projecting, assuming, inventing stories to replace the truth I refused to offer. He's angry. He's planning something. He knows something we don't. I let every theory breathe. Because when people don't know what you're thinking, they imagine the worst. And imagination is a ruthless enemy. I watched them spiral slowly, beautifully, not the dramatic kind of breaking, the quiet kind. The kind that starts with overthinking and ends with self-destruction. They replayed old conversations, searching for hidden meanings that were never there. They dissected my pauses, my eye contact, my lack of response. Every silence became a mirror, and they hated what they saw. They began to confess without realizing it, explaining themselves unprompted, justifying actions I never accused them of. That's the power of silence. It makes guilt speak. I didn't accuse, I did confront. I didn't corner them, I waited. And waiting is lethal when you're no longer desperate. They filled the space with nervous energy, with contradictions, with fear disguised as confidence. I learned more by saying nothing than I ever learned by asking questions, because people reveal everything when they believe they're being judged, even if the judgment exists only in their own mind. They tried to regain control, tried to provoke me into reaction, tried to force clarity so they could stop bleeding internally. But I stayed still. Stillness is domination without effort. They couldn't fight me. You can't fight silence. There's no surface to strike, so they fought each other. Blame shifted, alliances cracked, loyalty dissolved into suspicion. I watched them turn inward, consume themselves, and the more they broke, the calmer I became. This wasn't chaos, it was design. Strategic silence isn't about manipulation through words, it's about manipulation through absence. You remove the signal, the system collapses on its own. They needed me to react so they could calibrate their next move. They needed feedback, validation, resistance. I gave them nothing, and without resistance, they lost direction. They began mistaking their fear for intuition, their paranoia for insight, their panic for truth. That's when dominance becomes absolute. Not when you overpower someone, but when they start defeating themselves on your behalf. I could see it in their posture, their voices, the way they measured every word around me. I had become a variable they couldn't control, an outcome they couldn't predict. Uncertainty hollowed them out. They lost sleep, lost focus, lost confidence. I gained nothing visible, no title, no applause, no acknowledgement, and yet the balance had shifted completely. Because power isn't about what you take, it's about what others lose in your presence. They lost certainty. They lost composure. They lost the illusion that they understood me. I let them guess, and every guess weakened them. I let them assume, and every assumption exposed a fear. I let them talk, and every word dug the hole deeper. This is the part they never teach you, the part society avoids. That silence can be crueler than confrontation. That restraint can be more violent than rage. That absence can dominate presence. I didn't need to manipulate actively. I only needed to withdraw completely. They broke themselves trying to reach me, trying to be seen, trying to be reassured, trying to regain a sense of control that was never theirs to begin with. And I watched, not with satisfaction, not with pity, with clarity, because this wasn't personal, this was evolution. The moment you stop explaining, people reveal who they are when they don't feel safe. The moment you stop reacting, they expose the fragility beneath their confidence. They thought silence was emptiness. They learned it was a vacuum, and vacuums don't just sit there. They pull everything inward. I didn't chase them. I didn't corner them. I didn't even acknowledge the breakdown. I let it happen. Because dominance doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need permission. It only needs patience. And as they unraveled, as they guessed, panicked, and fractured, I understood something final. The strongest position is not attack. It is refusal. Refusal to explain. Refusal to clarify. Refusal to soothe the discomfort of those who no longer deserve access to your mind. I didn't break them. I simply stopped holding them together, and that was enough. I became what they warned me about. They whispered about me in corridors. They warned others. Watch out for him. Stay away from her. Danger. I listened. At first it hurt. It stung like acid on open skin. Their warnings were meant to shame me, to control me, to make me small again. But one day I realized something. The warning was a compliment because they only warn about things they fear. They only fear what they cannot contain. They only fear what cannot be tamed. So I embraced it. I became the shadow they spoke of, the threat they whispered behind closed doors, the storm they promised would never arrive. I didn't ask permission. I didn't apologize. I didn't seek approval. I became the chaos they feared, wrapped in flesh. I became the reckoning they denied themselves the courage to face. They called me a villain, and I wore it like armor, heavy, unyielding, unforgiving. Because villainy is not evil. It is authenticity. It is refusing to bend, to kneel, to compromise your truth for comfort or convenience. I didn't step into darkness. I stepped into myself. Every cruelty I endured, every betrayal I survived, every silence I endured and held like a weapon, it was forged into me, into the person I was meant to become. And now I am complete, not complete in sweetness, not complete in acceptance, but complete in power, complete in understanding. Complete in the terrifying clarity of my own will. I am the anti-hero they never expected. The one who doesn't wait for validation, the one who doesn't beg for approval, the one who doesn't ask for mercy. They taught me the world would crush me if I stepped out of line. They tried to label me obedient, docile, small. I ignored them, and in ignoring them I found freedom. I became what they warned about, not because I wanted to scare them, not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to shrink any longer. They warned about my ambition. I accepted it. They warned about my rage. I refined it into fire. They warned about my indifference. I let it sharpen into steel. Every label they used against me, they handed me as tools. Every accusation, every cautionary tale, they offered as fuel. Every whispered danger became a badge of honor. I walk through the world now unchained, unapologetic, unrepentant, and there is a pride in that. A pride that doesn't require their consent. A pride that doesn't need their understanding. Because the villain they imagine, they never imagine me fully. They never imagine the precision, the control, the elegance with which power could be claimed without begging for it. I am not the caricature they sketched in fear. I am the embodiment of what happens when silence, strategy, and resolve merge. I am the storm that no warning can prepare you for. And yes, I revel in it, not cruelty, not chaos for the sake of chaos, but mastery, the mastery of myself, the mastery of my world. I became what they warned me about, and I would not change a single moment that led here. Every betrayal, every slight, every misjudgment, they sculpted me. Every whispered caution, every fearful glance, they confirmed the path. I am what they feared. I am what they tried to break. I am what they could not control. And now I look at myself and I see not a monster, but a force, a necessary force, a force that commands. A force that survives. They will tell stories. They will write warnings in hushed tones. They will whisper my name like a cautionary tale, and I will smile. Because in every warning, in every whispered beware, lies the acknowledgement they could never give aloud. I am power incarnate. I am the reckoning they cannot escape. I am unstoppable. I became what they warned me about. And in doing so, I became unstoppable. I look in the mirror, not for approval, not for validation, but for recognition. I see every scar, every fracture, every moment I was told to bow, and I don't. I never did. I embrace it all, every shadow, every rage, every hunger, every ambition that they feared. I don't hide, I don't apologize, I don't explain. Because the world warned me about me, and now I am exactly what it feared. And there is no turning back, no retreat, no compromise, no surrender. I am the villain. I am the anti-hero. I am the truth they refuse to see. And I revel in it. I became what they warned me about, and in embracing it, I became everything they underestimated. Everything they feared, everything. I am alive, I am relentless, I am inevitable, I am what they warned me about, and I have finally arrived. No more justifications, only results. I stopped talking, I stopped explaining. No more reasons, no more pleas for understanding. No more begging the world to see me clearly, because words are weak. Words are chains. Words are invitations for doubt, delay, and betrayal. Action is the only language left. Action is the only truth. Action is the reckoning they can't ignore. I move, and the world feels it, not in whispers, not in warnings, but in the weight of inevitability. Every step I take carves a path that cannot be undone. Every choice I make sets consequences in motion. Every motion I execute reminds them they are no longer in control. I deliver, not explanations, not justifications, but results. The world expected me to plead, to rationalize, to soften my edges. It misjudged me. I am no longer asking permission. I am no longer seeking approval. I am no longer negotiating my existence. I act. And the consequences speak louder than any argument. Every hesitation I once allowed is gone. Every doubt I once entertained is burned away. Every fear I once carried is a weapon now in my hands. I strike with precision. I strike without apology. I strike without hesitation. And they see it. The ones who doubted, the ones who mocked, the ones who whispered behind my back, they see it. The silence that once belonged to them now belongs to me. The control they clung to is slipping, dissolving. The chaos they feared is here, not as accident, not as revenge, but as inevitability. I am the consequence. No explanations, no debates, no last-minute bargains. The results are mine to deliver, and they cannot be bargained with. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be ignored. The momentum builds. It does not falter. It does not pause. It does not seek mercy. Every action compounds the last. Every decision drives forward. Every movement echoes louder, faster, stronger. I don't need their understanding. I don't need their sympathy. I don't need their permission. I am sufficient unto myself. I am the force they underestimated. I am the reckoning they cannot outrun, and the world bends beneath it. The ones who laughed at me, who questioned me, who sought to define me, they falter now. They hesitate. They second-guess. They stumble because I act, because I produce, because I deliver. No words, no pleas, no excuses, only results. The fire I carry does not announce itself. It does not beg to be noticed. It burns quietly, relentlessly, invisibly, until it consumes everything in its path. And when the smoke clears, only truth remains. I have acted. I have delivered. I have changed the equation. The world cannot rewrite it. The world cannot negotiate it. The world cannot forget it. I am not here to justify. I am here to conclude. I am here to end the hesitation. I am here to demonstrate the final, undeniable power of decisiveness. They thought they understood me. They thought they could predict me. They thought they could contain me. They were wrong because I don't explain, I don't plead, I don't apologize, I act. And the results are irreversible. And the consequences are absolute. I am no longer the one who waits for permission. I am no longer the one who bargains for understanding. I am no longer the one who asks for recognition. I am the storm. I am the consequence. I am the result. And with every action, with every move, I grow stronger. Every barrier I encounter bends and breaks. Every adversary who doubts me falters. Every attempt to stop me fails. I am the inevitability they feared. I am the reckoning they were warned about. I am the force that cannot be argued with. No more justifications, no more explanations, no more pleading, only results. I have stopped waiting, I have stopped asking, I have stopped hoping. Now I deliver, and the world knows it. Because action cannot lie, action cannot falter, action cannot be ignored. Every move I make is deliberate, every consequence is designed, every result is absolute. And those who once underestimated me, they feel it. The fear in their eyes is the first acknowledgement I no longer need to ask for. The hesitation in their steps is the proof that my momentum is unstoppable. I am no longer negotiating my place in the world. I am no longer waiting for validation. I am no longer hiding, I act. And in action I am reborn. No more justifications, only results. No more silence for understanding. Only consequences for the unprepared. No more mercy for hesitation. Only the clarity of decisive power. I move and everything bends beneath it. The world shifts, not slowly, not kindly, but with brutal, uncompromising inevitability. No more words, no more pleas, no more waiting, only action, only results, only the undeniable proof that I have arrived, and they cannot stop me, they cannot outrun me, they cannot undo me. Because I am the result they never saw coming, because I am the consequence they ignored, because I am the force that refuses explanation, no more justifications. Only results, and I will continue, relentless, unstoppable, unapologetic, until the world bends beneath the weight of my action, until the impossible becomes inevitable, until every word they ever demanded is drowned in the echo of what I have done. No more words, no more explanations, no more waiting, only results, only power, only me. You stopped explaining and took all the power back I remember when I still believed words could save me. When I thought if I explained myself clearly enough, slowly enough, kindly enough, they would finally understand. I remember shaping sentences like offerings, polishing them, softening them, bleeding into them. I remember shrinking my truth so it wouldn't scare anyone. I remember apologizing before I was accused. I remember defending myself against crimes I never committed. And I remember thinking that made me good. It didn't. It made me edible. I explained my intentions. I explained my pain, I explained my silence, I explained my ambition, I explained my boundaries like they were mistakes. I explained, and every explanation felt like talking while drowning. Mouth open, lungs burning, hands waving above the surface while everyone watched and waited. Not to save me, but to see how long I'd last, because explaining is not communication, it's begging with better grammar. And I didn't know that yet. I thought clarity would protect me. I thought honesty would disarm them. I thought truth was armor. I was wrong. Truth was ammunition. Every word I offered came back sharpened, twisted, rebranded. My honesty became an excuse. My exhaustion became weakness. My boundaries became arrogance. They didn't misunderstand me. They studied me. They learned which words made me hesitate, which memories made my voice shake, which truths made me defensive. And then they used them. Every explanation I gave became a handle they could grab. Every confession became leverage. Every attempt to be understood became permission to be attacked. That's when confusion curdled into something darker. Because there is a moment, a precise moment, when you realize you're not being heard, you're being hunted. I watched them smile while I bled. Friends, mentors, lovers, people who claimed to care leaned in closer, not to help, but to enjoy the view. They liked me better exposed, raw, defensive. They liked the power imbalance. They liked watching me justify my existence while they sat comfortably above it. I could feel it in the silence after I spoke, that pause, that quiet calculation. They weren't considering my words. They were weighing how much control they still had. And when I finally noticed, something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a fracture running through bone. Self-doubt didn't arrive all at once. It was planted, watered, fed by repetition. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I did need to explain myself better. And so I defended, and defended, and defended, until I didn't recognize the voice doing the talking anymore. My identity split under the pressure. The version of me they approved of, and the version of me I kept buried. That was the first crack, and cracks let monsters out. Wanting to be understood is expensive. It drains you slowly, emotion by emotion, layer by layer. You start peeling yourself open to prove you're real, stripping skin. Exposing nerves. Look, see, I'm human, please believe me. And the more you give, the more they demand, until exhaustion becomes your default state, until rage begins simmering beneath restraint, until you wake up one day and realize they never cared. Not about understanding, not about truth, not about you. What they cared about was access. The day that hit me was cold, clean, final, not sadness, clarity. They didn't misunderstand me. They benefited from misunderstanding me. And in that moment, something ancient woke up. I stopped explaining, not dramatically, not heroically, I just stopped. And the silence was unbearable for me at first, because silence felt like standing naked without armor, no defense, no story, no justification, just presence. But the longer I stayed quiet, the stranger things became. They leaned forward, they filled the gaps, they told stories on my behalf, and in doing so, they revealed themselves. Alone with my thoughts, no witnesses, no audience, no jury, I finally faced myself. No one to impress, no one to convince, just brutal inventory, the rage I hid, the hunger I denied, the ambition I pretended not to have. I stared into a broken mirror and saw every version of myself staring back. Not weak, starved. I didn't reject them, I accepted them. Pain stopped asking for permission. So did I. Short sentences replaced long explanations. No more victim language. No more emotional justifications. Pain became fuel. Silence became strategy. I buried the apologetic version of me without ceremony. No speeches, no mourners, just fire. And when the ashes settled, innocence was gone. Power was never given, it was taken. Every time I explained myself, I surrendered it. Every time I stayed silent, I reclaimed it. Silence is not weakness. It is control. When you stop explaining, people panic. They don't know where they stand anymore. They guess. They spiral. They expose themselves trying to provoke a reaction, and I let them. I watched. I waited. I owed no one comfort. I owed no one closure. I owed no one truth. The moment the world felt smaller was the moment I grew. Predators don't announce themselves. They move. I stopped explaining, and they panicked. Fear replaced mockery. Confusion replaced confidence. I became what they warned me about, and I didn't apologize because now there are no justifications, only results. They thought my silence was weakness at first. They mistook restraint for hesitation. They mistook patience for fear. They leaned in, expecting me to explain myself again, to soften, to clarify, to reassure them that I was still controllable. I didn't. And that's when the guessing started. You could see it in their eyes, that restless flicker, that sudden need to fill the void. Silence is unbearable to those who rely on noise for power. They spoke first, then louder, then sloppier. They projected motives, invented intentions, accused me of things they themselves were guilty of. I let them, because when people don't know your next move, they reveal theirs. Every word they spoke became a confession. Every accusation became a mirror. They were unraveling in real time, and I wasn't lifting a finger. Psychological dominance doesn't require force. It requires patience. I learned to enjoy the pause after they spoke, that moment where they waited for my reaction. No anger, no denial, no explanation. Just stillness. That stillness ate at them, because control addicts cannot stand uncertainty. They need reassurance that they still matter, that they still affect you. And when they realized they didn't, they broke. One by one, some tried guilt, some tried threats, some tried nostalgia. Remember who you used to be. I did, and I buried him. Others tried rage, raised voices, sharp words. They wanted to provoke me into proving I was still human. I didn't. I became deliberate, every step measured. Every response optional. I watched them spiral while I stood still. That's the thing about silence, it forces people to confront themselves, and most of them cannot survive that encounter. They began to overthink every interaction, every look, every delay. Was I planning something? Was I angry? Was I done with them? Their minds did the work for me. I didn't manipulate, I withdrew. And the absence of access felt like punishment. They tried to label me. Cold, arrogant, cruel. I accepted every label, because labels are the last defense of people who have lost control. I wasn't cruel, I was finished. Finished justifying, finished shrinking, finished explaining myself to people who only listened for weaknesses. They warned me not to become this. They said silence would make me heartless, that power would corrupt me, that distance would turn me into something ugly. They were right. And I chose it anyway, because softness didn't protect me. Understanding didn't save me. Good intentions didn't shield me. This did. I became precise. Words were no longer emotional. They were surgical. I spoke when it mattered. I acted when it counted. No announcements, no threats, just consequences. People don't fear anger. They fear inevitability. And that's what I became. When I moved, things changed. When I decided, outcomes followed. No debates, no appeals. Results speak a language no one can interrupt. They asked why I changed. I didn't answer. They demanded explanations. I gave them outcomes. I stopped telling people what I was going to do. I did it, and the shift was immediate. The same people who dismissed me began to hesitate. The same voices that talked over me grew careful. Tone changed. Posture changed. Power recognizes power, and submission always follows certainty. I wasn't chasing dominance. I embodied it. Momentum doesn't need motivation speeches. It feeds itself. One decision made cleanly. One boundary enforced without emotion, one action taken without announcement, and suddenly the ground tilted. Every step forward made the next inevitable. I no longer needed to convince myself. I watched doors open without knocking, watched resistance collapse without conflict, because resistance requires friction, and I had become smooth, unavoidable. They finally understood something they should have learned earlier. I wasn't explaining myself because I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't angry because anger wastes energy. I wasn't loud because volume is for the uncertain. I had crossed a threshold they couldn't follow. This wasn't revenge. Revenge looks backward. This was evolution. I didn't destroy them. I outgrew them. And growth is humiliating to those who stayed small. I became what they whispered about, the version they warned others to avoid. The one who doesn't argue, doesn't plead, doesn't perform. The one who decides. They say power reveals who you really are. They're wrong. Power reveals who you were always becoming. I didn't lose my humanity. I refined it. Compassion stayed, but it became selective. Empathy remained, but it no longer overruled self-respect. Mercy exists, but it's no longer automatic. I am not cruel. I am accurate. I don't chase validation. I don't seek approval. I move, and the world adjusts. Look at yourself now. Look at what survived. Look at what hardened. Look at what refused to die. Those scars, they're not damage. They're proof of adaptation. You don't owe softness to people who sharpen their knives around your trust. You don't owe explanations to those who never listened. You don't owe your old self loyalty when it kept you weak. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fear you. Let them rewrite the story, because while they're talking, you're advancing. And by the time they realize what you've become, it's already too late. No more justifications, no more warnings, no more speeches, only movement, only results. And this time, you don't stop. I don't need to be liked. Listen carefully. I don't care if my smile comforts you. I don't care if my words soothe you. I don't care if my actions earn your applause. All of that is irrelevant. All of that is meaningless. Approval is a leash. Validation is a chain. And I have broken both. Respect. Respect is the only currency that matters. It is the measure of power. It is the acknowledgement of presence. It is the recognition that my decisions, my choices, my very existence demand notice. I don't bargain for it. I don't plead for it. I don't perform for it. I command it. Look at the world. Look at how easily people bow for comfort, for approval, for empty affection. Watch them twist themselves into shapes they are not. Watch them apologize for breathing. I don't breathe like them. I don't bend like them. I don't shrink. I stand. I rise. I assert. Every word I speak carries weight. Every action I take leaves consequence. Every glance I give is a warning. I am not to be dismissed. I have stopped seeking your affection. I have stopped craving your nods. I have stopped hoping that your smiles mean loyalty. They don't. None of them do. I have learned a truth most never face. It is not my job to be liked. It is not my purpose to be palatable. It is not my obligation to make you comfortable. I exist beyond that. I exist beyond your need for approval. And now respect is not given, respect is taken, respect is earned, no, not earned, respected, I claim it. Do not mistake this for arrogance. Do not confuse this with entitlement. I am not asking, I am stating, I am here, I am present, I am power incarnate. Do you feel the weight of it? Do you feel the shift in air when I enter a room? Do you feel the hesitation in your tongue, the falter in your thoughts? That is respect. That is acknowledgement. That is submission, not to me, but to reality. I don't negotiate, I don't explain, I don't apologize for being what I am. I am precise, I am deliberate, I am inevitable. I have watched those who demanded to be liked crumble before me. I have watched them grasp for relevance, I have watched them bargain for warmth, and I stood silent, still, unyielding. I have learned something more. People fear what they cannot control. People respect what they cannot ignore. Do you understand? Respect is not an emotion you feel for me. Respect is a recognition of the truth, a recognition that I am not soft, that I am not pliable, that I will not yield. I do not adjust to fit the comfort of others. I do not soften to avoid conflict. I do not temper my convictions to appease the fragile. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. I will speak when I choose. I will act when I choose. I will take when I choose. And the world will bend, not because it wants to, but because it must. I have no patience for those who confuse kindness with weakness. I have no interest in those who mistake silence for indecision. I have no tolerance for those who believe flattery equals allegiance. Respect is the law I write with every step. Respect is the fire I ignite with every word. Respect is the shadow I cast over all who thought themselves taller than me. Do not approach me with expectation. Do not assume my favor. Do not hope for my consent. Respect is not permission. Respect is acknowledgement. Respect is inevitability. I have no need to be embraced. I have no need to be admired. I have no need to be liked. Only respected, only recognized, only accounted for. And this is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. I am not small. I am not silent. I am not to be overlooked. I am the one who decides. I am the one who acts. I am the one who survives. I am the storm you cannot predict. I am the shadow you cannot outrun. I am the fire you cannot extinguish. And yet I am calm, I am composed, I am in control, because respect is not loud, respect does not beg, respect does not announce itself, respect is felt, respected is earned in fear of absence, respected is imbued by the inevitability of presence. I have arrived, I am here, I am, and the world will bend to acknowledge it. Do not seek my approval, do not chase my attention. Do not hope for my favor. None of that matters. Only one thing matters, respect. And I demand it. I demand it with every look. I demand it with every word. I demand it with every action, because I don't need to be liked. I need to be respected. And respect is not gentle. Respect is not optional. Respect is not delayed. It is immediate. It is inevitable. It is mine. So hear me clearly, world. I will not bend. I will not soften. I will not apologize for taking up space, for existing fully, for commanding reality itself. I am not asking, I am not negotiating, I am not performing. I am, and the only thing I seek, the only thing that matters, the only thing I demand is respect. Do you understand? Do you feel it? Because this is not a request, this is not a preference. This is a declaration. I don't need to be liked. I don't need approval. I don't need validation. I need respect, and I will have it. I am the consequence they warned you about. I am the shadow in the corner of your vision. The chill that creeps up your spine, the silence that screams louder than any voice. I am inevitable. Do you understand what that means? Not possible to avoid, not possible to reason with, not possible to escape. I'm not coming for you. I am here. I have always been here. You just never noticed. I am the reckoning, the truth you refused to see, the law you ignored, the weight you cannot lift. I do not negotiate. I do not compromise. I do not stumble. I am the fire in the night sky, the storm you cannot outrun, the hand that always lands where it intends. I am the storm they whispered about, the danger they dismissed, the lesson they refused to learn. I am what happens when warnings are ignored. Do you feel it now? The shift in the air, the tension in your pulse, the knowledge that all of your certainty is an illusion. I am the consequence. I am the predator. You are the prey. Do not misunderstand. This is not cruel. This is not personal. This is law. The weak shrink. The fearful crumble. The unprepared are consumed. I do not ask. I do not warn. I do not justify. I strike. I act. I exist. And the world bends. It bends because it must. It bends because resistance is meaningless. It bends because I have already won. I am the result of every slight ignored, every insult endured, every betrayal suffered. I am the sum of all the fires they lit to destroy me. And I am walking, breathing, unbroken proof that fire forges. I am the consequence. And the world. The world is learning to fear what it cannot touch, what it cannot name, what it cannot control. I am patience. I am precision. I am inevitability. I do not falter. I do not hesitate. I do not fail. I am the silence that makes kings uneasy, the shadow that makes armies rethink their formation, the truth that makes empires tremble in their own lies. Do you feel it? Do you understand? The fear in their eyes is mine to command. The doubt in their minds is mine to cultivate. The uncertainty in their hearts is mine to claim. I do not need to announce my victory. I do not need to boast. I do not need to celebrate. It exists. It is undeniable. It is complete. I am the storm you cannot outrun. I am the shadow you cannot hide from. I am the fire you cannot extinguish. And they will remember. Oh, they will remember. They will whisper my name in fear. They will recount my deeds in trembling awe. They will teach their children the lesson too late. I am not mercy. I am not forgiveness. I am not kindness. I am the consequence, the reckoning, the inevitable. I do not pause. I do not question. I do not retreat. I strike where they are weakest. I move where they least expect. I act where silence would suffice for the timid. Every step I take shakes the ground. Every word I speak echoes beyond reason. Every glance I give bends the will of those who dare oppose. I am relentless. I am complete. I am the nightmare that walks in daylight, the predator in plain sight. The reckoning in every moment they think themselves safe. And yet I am calm, I am composed, I am inevitable, because I do not wait, I do not hope, I do not plead, I am. And what I bring, what I embody, what I represent is the truth of power. It is seized. It is unflinching. It is unstoppable. I am the consequence they feared, the shadow they ignored, the fire they could not contain. I am the reckoning they whispered about behind closed doors, the storm that no preparation could stop. The end of all illusions. I do not ask for respect. I do not beg for fear. I do not bargain for obedience. I take it. I command it. I own it. I am the storm. I am the shadow. I am the fire. I am the consequence. And all who look upon me, all who stand in my path, will remember this moment. Because it is the moment they learned I am inevitable. I am unstoppable. I am what they warned you about. And the world bends. I do not falter. I do not forgive. I do not forget. I am the consequence. I am the reckoning. I am the end. And they, all of them, will fall because I am. I don't need to be liked. I don't need approval. I don't need validation. I don't need nods, smiles, or applause. I need respect. Respect does not ask. Respect does not beg. Respect does not beguile. Respect is commanded. Respect is earned by action. Respect is demanded by consequence. I've stopped explaining. I've stopped justifying. I've stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. They panicked when I fell silent. Mockery turned into unease, curiosity into suspicion. Fear crept into their eyes, slow, deliberate, consuming. They were unprepared for a me who spoke less but meant more. They were unready for the calm that carried storms in its wake. I watched them guess. I watched them stumble. I watched them break beneath the weight of their own assumptions. They did not understand, they never understood, and they never will. I became what they warned about. The villain in their stories, the danger in their whispered warnings, the shadow lurking just beyond their safety, and I am proud. Pride is not arrogance, pride is acknowledgement. Pride is recognition of what it took to rise while they fell asleep at the wheel of their own complacency. I became what they feared, not by chance, not by accident, by choice, by deliberate, unflinching choice. No more apologies, no more explanations. No more soft edges for the comfort of those too weak to handle the truth. I do not justify, I do not excuse, I do not temper, I act, I move, I claim. The moment I stopped explaining, the world began to shift. Eyes darted, hearts quickened, voices faltered. Fear replaced mockery, uncertainty replaced arrogance, and power, real, undeniable power, became visible. I watched as their minds spiraled, as they searched for motives that did not exist, as they guessed, as they doubted, as they feared. Silence became my weapon. Silence became my ally. Silence became the chain around their certainty, breaking them piece by piece. I do not speak to be understood, I speak to be felt, I act to be feared, I move to be remembered. No one guesses my intentions, no one predicts my next step, no one controls the path I carve through their illusions. I don't need clarity, I don't need to explain my reasoning, I don't need their comprehension, I owe no one comfort, I owe no one closure. I owe no one truth. I am free. I am unchained. I am unstoppable. And in that freedom, the world became smaller, others shrank, their fears magnified, their confidence dissolved, and I expanded. I became predator. They became prey. Do not confuse calm for weakness. Do not mistake patience for hesitation. Do not think restraint is mercy. I do not forgive. I do not forget. I do not pause. The predator does not debate the hunt. The predator does not bargain with the prey. Predator moves, and I move. I stopped explaining, I stopped pleading, I stopped seeking approval. And when I did, they realized, too late, that the game had changed. They tried to guess my motives. They tried to anticipate my actions. They tried to regain the control they had lost. But the truth is simple. I am the consequence they refused to acknowledge. I am the reckoning they believed would never arrive. I am the storm they underestimated, the shadow they ignored, the fire they could not contain. I am not merciful. I am not benevolent, I am the inevitable. Every slight they thought unnoticed. Every insult they thought forgotten. Every betrayal they believed harmless. All of it forged me. All of it strengthened me. All of it ensured they would never underestimate me again. I am the sum of every fire they lit to burn me. I am the blade forged in their heat, tempered by pain, sharpened by betrayal. I am the reflection they refuse to face, and they will feel me in every decision they regret. In every hesitation they cannot explain. In every fear they cannot silence. I do not apologize. I do not explain. I do not slow. Action replaces words. Consequence replaces explanation. Momentum replaces doubt. I am relentless. I am complete. I am inevitable. And when they finally look, when they finally realize, they will understand the cost of underestimating me. They will see the predator in the calm. They will see the fire in the quiet. They will see the consequence in every step. I am the shadow in their certainty, the storm in their arrogance, the truth they refuse to acknowledge. I don't need to be liked. I don't need approval. I don't need anyone's understanding. I need respect. I demand it. I claim it. And I take it because the world bends, because the weak break, because the fearful falter. And I do not. I am the consequence. I am the reckoning. I am the end. I am the predator. They are the prey. The world remembers my name. The world remembers my power. The world remembers my inevitability. I am unstoppable. I am unrelenting. I am undeniable. I am what they warned you about. And I am done explaining. I do not pause. I do not retreat. I do not falter, because I am. I remember the moment I stopped waiting. The world had opinions, expectations, rules. They wanted me broken, but I refused to kneel. I was tired of explaining. Tired of bending, contorting, proving myself to people who refused to see me. Tired of peeling my skin layer by layer, showing them what was real, only for them to look past it. And in that exhaustion, rage began to simmer. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the quiet, deliberate kind, the kind that waits, The kind that plans, the kind that consumes from the inside until it becomes power. They never cared, not truly, not even once, not misunderstanding, not accident, malice, cold, unrelenting malice, and I understood it then. The sadness, the disbelief, the pleading. It turned to something else, a calm, a clarity, a cold awareness. Silence became my first act of rebellion. I stopped explaining, I stopped justifying, I stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. And the world noticed. But I had not yet claimed power, not fully. The silence was uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Tension hung in the air, no victory yet, only a promise. Alone with my thoughts, no witnesses, no one to nod or smile, no one to forgive or cheer. Brutal self-reflection became my mirror, not flattering, not forgiving, but necessary. I met the parts of me I hid, the rage, the ambition, the hunger, the cruelty. I looked into a broken mirror and saw truth. I saw the fragments of who I was, scattered and sharp, and I accepted them. Pain stopped asking for permission. It transformed into fuel. Victimhood died. Short, brutal truths became my language. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I. The apologetic version of me died. Burned. Consumed. Laid to rest in a funeral of old insecurities and borrowed niceties. Innocence ended. Power was never given. It was taken. I saw the games, the dynamics. I understood the mechanics. Explaining was surrender. Now my voice was confident, commanding. Silence is not weakness. It is control. Let them reveal themselves. Let them stumble into their own miscalculations. Psychological warfare becomes natural. I owe no one clarity, no comfort, no truth. I am detached from validation. I am free through indifference. I owe no one closure. I owe no one my explanations. And in that moment, the world felt smaller. Others shrank, their fears magnified, their confidence dissolved. I expanded, predator, prey. The calm was chilling, the storm silent but inevitable. I stopped explaining. They panicked. Fear replaced mockery. Power shifted. I watched them guess. I watched them spiral. I watched the fragile threads of their certainty unravel in my silence. I became what they warned me about. The villain in their stories, the shadow they whispered of, the anti-hero, unapologetically complete. I am proud. Pride is acknowledgement, recognition of survival, proof of transformation. I became what they feared, deliberately, consciously. No more apologies, no more justifications. I act, I move, I claim. Pain, betrayal, exhaustion, they forged me. The fire they lit to destroy me tempered me instead. I am the blade sharpened in their heat. I am the consequence they refuse to anticipate. I am the reckoning they cannot stop. I don't need to be liked. I don't need approval. I don't need understanding. I need respect. I demand it. I claim it. I watch. I wait. I strike not out of malice, but out of inevitability. Silence, patience, observation, these are my tools. Action replaces words. Consequence replaces explanation. Momentum replaces hesitation. The predator does not negotiate. The predator does not plead. The predator moves. I do not forgive. I do not forget. I do not hesitate. I am relentless. I am complete. I am inevitable. Every doubt they held, every fear they ignored, every underestimation they made, it fueled me. I am unstoppable, unrelenting, undeniable. They see it now, the predator in the calm, the fire in the quiet, the consequence in motion. I am the shadow in certainty, the storm in arrogance. The truth they refuse to face. I don't need to explain. I don't need to justify. I do not pause. I do not retreat. I do not falter. I am action. I am consequence. I am momentum. I don't need to be liked. I don't need to be understood. I need to be respected. And I do not ask, I do not plead, I do not bend, I take, I claim, I dominate, the world bends, the weak break, the fearful falter, and I do not, I am the inevitable, I am the reckoning, I am the end, I am predator, they are prey, I am what they warned you about, and I am done explaining, I am. The villain's ascent, performance, script, I remember the moment, I stopped waiting. The world had opinions, expectations, rules. They wanted me broken, but I refused to kneel. I was tired of explaining, tired of bending, contorting, proving myself to people who refused to see me. Tired of peeling my skin layer by layer, showing them what was real, only for them to look past it. And in that exhaustion, rage began to simmer. Not the loud, obvious kind. The quiet, deliberate kind. The kind that waits, The kind that plans, the kind that consumes from the inside until it becomes power. They never cared, not truly, not even once. Not misunderstanding, not accident, malice, cold, unrelenting malice, and I understood it then. The sadness, the disbelief, the pleading turned into something else. A calm, a clarity, a cold awareness. Silence became my first act of rebellion. I stopped explaining. I stopped justifying. I stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. And the world noticed. But I had not yet claimed power, not fully. The silence was uncomfortable, unfamiliar, tension hung in the air, no victory yet, only a promise. Alone with my thoughts, no witnesses, no one to nod, no one to forgive, no one to cheer. Brutal self-reflection became my mirror, not flattering, not forgiving, but necessary. I met the parts of me I hid. The rage, the ambition, the hunger, the cruelty. I looked into a broken mirror and saw truth. I saw the fragments of who I was, scattered, sharp, and I accepted them. Pain stopped asking for permission. It transformed into fuel. Victimhood died. Pain didn't ask. Neither would I. The apologetic version of me died. Burned, consumed, laid to rest. Power was never given. It was taken. I saw the games, the dynamics. I understood the mechanics. Explaining was surrender. Now my voice is confident, commanding. Silence is not weakness. It is control. Let them reveal themselves. Let them stumble. Let them fall into their own miscalculations. I owe no one clarity, comfort, truth, closure. I am detached from validation. I am free through indifference. And in that moment, the world felt smaller. Others shrank. Their fears magnified. Their confidence dissolved. I expanded. Predator, prey. The calm, chilling. The storm, silent but inevitable. I stopped explaining. They panicked. Fear replaced mockery. Power shifted. I watched them guess. I watched them spiral. I watched the fragile threads of their certainty unravel in my silence. I became what they warned me about. The villain, the shadow, the anti-hero, unapologetic, complete. I am proud. Pride is acknowledgement, recognition of survival, proof of transformation. I became what they feared deliberately, consciously. No more apologies, no more justifications. I act, I move, I claim. Pain, betrayal, exhaustion. They forged me. The fire they lit tempered me. I am the blade sharpened in their heat. The consequence they refuse to anticipate. The reckoning they cannot stop. I don't need to be liked. I don't need approval. I don't need understanding. I need respect. I demand it. I claim it. I watch. I wait. I strike not out of malice, but out of inevitability. Silence. Patience. Observation. Action replaces words. Consequence replaces explanation. Momentum replaces hesitation. The predator does not negotiate. The predator does not plead. The predator moves. I do not forgive. I do not forget. I do not hesitate. I am relentless. I am complete. I am inevitable. Every doubt they held, every fear they ignored, every underestimation they made fueled me. I am unstoppable, unrelenting, undeniable. They see it now. The predator in the calm, the fire in the quiet, the consequence in motion. I am the shadow in certainty, the storm in arrogance. The truth they refuse to face. I don't need to explain. I don't need to justify. I do not pause, I do not retreat. I do not falter, I am action, I am consequence, I am momentum. I don't need to be liked, I don't need to be understood, I need to be respected. And I do not ask, I do not plead, I do not bend, I take, I claim, I dominate. The world bends, the weak break, the fearful falter. And I do not, I am the inevitable, I am the reckoning, I am the end. I am predator, they are prey. I am what they warned you about. And I am done explaining. I am, let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, let them whisper in their circles, let them clutch their false courage, let them tremble in the shadows of my silence, let them hate. Yes, let them hate, let their teeth gnash, let their fists pound, let their hearts quake at the thought of me, because hate is their confession. Hate is the proof that I exist beyond their control. Hate is the acknowledgement of power that I never asked permission to claim. Let them fear. Let them cower behind lies they tell themselves. Let them shake as they calculate. Let them doubt every step they thought was safe. Fear is the mirror they refuse to look into. Fear is the weight they cannot bear. Fear is the sound of their own weakness screaming back at them. Let them watch. Watch me move. Watch me claim. Watch me dismantle the illusions they've built. Watch the predator stand while they flail, while they stumble. While they hope for mercy I will not give. Let them hate, let them fear. Let them watch, say my name in anger, say my name in dread, say my name in whispers that echo in empty halls. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. Every glance at me, every miscalculation, every shiver in the dark feeds the storm I am becoming. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, because in their hate I am confirmed. In their fear I am realized. In their eyes I am unstoppable. Let them watch and understand nothing. Let them hate. Let them fear, let them watch, let them stumble, let them break, let them wonder if what they see is even real. It is, all of it. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, let them scream, let them whisper, let them panic, let them calculate in vain. I am the calm they cannot predict, the storm they cannot outrun, the shadow that stretches across their certainty. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch, let them hate, let them fear. Let them watch, feel it, feel the truth. I am here and they are powerless. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. I do not need their approval. I do not need their praise. I do not need their understanding. I only need their acknowledgement through fear, through hate, through watching. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. Let them hate, let them fear, let them watch. And in their fear, in their hate, in their watching, I rise, I dominate, I am unstoppable. This is what power sounds like. This is what power sounds like. Not the roar, not the shout, not the desperate clamor of those who beg to be heard. Power does not announce itself. Power waits, power observes, power decides. Hear that? Nothing, just the quiet before the inevitable. The world thinks noise is strength. The weak mistake their own panic for authority. They think speaking louder makes them bigger. They mistake fury for control. They mistake chaos for dominance. I do not need noise. I do not need justification. I do not need permission. This is power, the sound of patience, the sound of inevitability, the sound of someone who has already decided and is waiting for the moment to strike. Silence, empty rooms, unanswered questions, unspoken threats. They fill the air with their fear. I let them speak. I let them reveal themselves. I let their assumptions echo back to them. They do not know. They do not see. They cannot feel the weight I carry. Power is not in the words you say. Power is in the absence of words. Power is the space between breaths. I watch them. They move. They guess. They try to predict and they fail. Listen carefully. Do you hear it? No noise, no warning, no applause, just certainty. I do not need their understanding. I do not need their fear to be loud. I do not need their consent. All I need is to exist. And the world bends in response. No shouting, no begging, no chaos. Only me. This is what power sounds like. A heartbeat in the dark, a shadow that does not move, a presence that does not apologize. It is not entertaining, it is not flashy, it is not loud, it is unstoppable. Silence, patience, observation, control, all of it contained in one unshakable will. I do not raise my voice, I do not explain myself, I do not announce my victories. They hear me in the absence of sound. They feel me in the spaces they cannot fill. They know me in the hesitation I leave behind. This is what power sounds like. A clock ticking in a room where no one dares to move. A breath held across empty halls. A question that cannot be answered. A presence that cannot be ignored. No clamor, no noise, no permission asked. I am power, and power does not need to announce itself. This is what power sounds like. Beat, silence. Listen and remember. I took everything they thought I didn't deserve. I took it all. Everything they said I couldn't. Everything they whispered behind my back, everything they swore I would never touch, I took it. And I took it without asking, without begging, without apology. They measured me. They counted my failures. They weighed my worth. They drew the lines. They placed the limits, and I crossed every one. I shattered every boundary. I devoured what they claimed was not mine. The rewards, the recognition, the power, the fear, all of it, I took it. And I did not hesitate. I did not falter. I did not excuse myself. I did not justify, because no one gave me permission. No one handed it over. No one acknowledged my right to claim it, so I claimed it anyway. Do you see? The world believes power is given, that privilege is deserved, that respect is earned through their rules. I rewrote the rules. I ignored their consent. I refused their approval. I took, and I took, and I took. The victories are mine. The spoils are mine. The triumph is mine, not because I deserved it, not because they recognized me. Not because they even understood. Because I claimed it, because I acted, because I was willing, because I am unstoppable. I watched them falter, I watched them stumble, I watched their certainty crumble. They thought they could contain me. They thought they could ignore me. They thought they could deny me, and I took everything, everything they said I couldn't have, everything they said I didn't deserve, everything they thought was beyond me. I took it, and I left no trace of their doubt, no apology, no excuse. No regrets, every victory, every conquest, every stolen moment of power, I took it. And they watched, and they hated, and they feared, because I became the embodiment of what they said I never could, because I became the force they swore would fail, because I became unstoppable. I am not here to apologize, I am not here to justify, I am not here to explain, I am here to take, I am here to own, I am here to dominate every reward, every triumph. Every crown they refused to place on my head, I took it. And I wear it now, not as a gift, not as a token, but as proof. Proof that I do not wait, proof that I do not plead, proof that I do not kneel. I take, I claim, I own, I am. Pause, almost a whisper. Everything, everything they said I couldn't. Everything they said I didn't deserve, everything, and I take it again and again and again. Because this is mine, and no one can take it back. I do not apologize. I do not explain, I do not justify, I own it, I am it. I have always been it, and they will remember, they will fear. They will understand in the end that everything they thought I didn't deserve, I took, and I will take it again. The world never changed, I did the world never changed. It moved the same way it always did, the streets, the rules, the lies, the betrayals. It did not pause for me, it did not notice me. It did not bend or shift or yield. I did, I changed, I adapted. I evolved. I became the force that the world never expected. Look at it. All the certainty they clung to, all the boundaries they thought existed, all the order they believed unbreakable. I shattered it, I bent it, I walked through it, and I did not rage, I did not plead, I did not fight their world with anger. I changed silently, calmly, patiently. I transformed while they slept. I grew while they distracted themselves with what they already knew. The world did not rise to meet me. It never does. It never will, it never has. It is not the world that limits us. It is the self, the hesitation, the fear, the waiting. I removed those chains, I removed those doubts, I removed the part of me that bent. I am not the same person who walked into their lies. I am not the same person who whispered apologies. I am not the same person who hoped for mercy. I am the reckoning they never anticipated, the shadow behind the throne, the calm storm, the quiet certainty that consumes their illusions. They speak of change, of progress, of growth. I embody it, not by their rules, not by their permission, but by my own design. The world did not shift. I did. I became the point of gravity, the axis around which all consequence now turns. Do you understand? It is not a world that rises to the strong. It is the strong who rise within it. It is the strong who redefine it. It is the strong who bend everything else to their will. I stopped waiting for validation. I stopped waiting for permission. I stopped waiting for understanding. I acted, I endured, I claimed, and I became inevitable. They did not change. The world did not change. I did. I changed. I rose. I owned, not by shouting, not by pleading, not by fighting them at their pace, by moving beyond it, by moving beyond them, by becoming something they cannot grasp. I am not angry. I am not bitter. I am not consumed. I am clear. I am focused. I am dominant. The world remains the same chaotic, indifferent, cruel place it has always been. And yet everything feels smaller, less significant, less capable of touching me, because I have grown beyond it, because I have grown beyond them, because I have grown beyond the rules they cling to. I see the patterns, I see the weaknesses, I see the limitations they will never admit. And I move through it. I move through it without haste, without waste, without error. They watch, they whisper, they doubt, but I am not concerned. I am not phased, I am inevitable. This is not arrogance, this is clarity, this is certainty. This is the understanding that when the world does not change, you must. And I did, not for them, not for recognition, not for approval, for me, for my vision, for my ascent. I am not here to rewrite the world. I am here to rise within it, to claim what they ignored, to own what they denied, to take what they feared I could. I am not a product of circumstance. I am not a victim of expectation. I am the architect, I am the inheritor, I am the one who moves beyond everything that would limit me. The world never changed, I did, and that is enough. Everything else falls into place. Everything else bends to my presence. Everything else must acknowledge me, not by fear alone, not by rage alone, but by the quiet, unshakable truth. I changed. I rose. I conquered myself. And in that, I became unstoppable. The world never changed. I did, and nothing. Nothing will ever be the same again. You will never hear my explanation again. I used to explain myself. I used to believe that if I spoke clearly enough, if I laid out every reason, every scar, every intention, they would understand. They never did. I spoke and they listened only for weakness. I explained and they searched for leverage. I opened my mouth and they sharpened their knives. So hear this, hear it once, and never again. You will never hear my explanation again, not because I lack one. Not because I am confused, not because I am afraid of being seen, but because I am finished begging to be understood. I explained myself to people who were never confused. They were comfortable doubting me, comfortable misjudging me, comfortable turning my honesty into a weapon. I explained myself to those who demanded clarity, but only so they could twist it, only so they could dissect it, only so they could decide whether I was worth respecting. That era is over. Listen carefully. This is the sound of a door closing. I no longer justify my silence. I no longer defend my choices. I no longer narrate my intentions like a warning label. If you don't understand me now, you never will. And that is no longer my problem. I used to think explanations were strength. That clarity was kindness. That transparency was power. I was wrong. Power is restraint. Power is control. Power is knowing exactly who you are and refusing to translate it for those who never earned access. I am not here to be decoded. I am not here to be audited. I am not here to soothe your discomfort with my evolution. I have already moved on by the time you ask your questions. You want reasons. You want closure. You want a neat sentence that fits inside your understanding of me. You will not get it, not because I am cruel, but because I am precise. Every explanation I gave before taught you how to doubt me. Every clarification taught you where to aim. Every defense trained you to expect one. I will not train my enemies anymore. Understand this shift, feel it. The silence you hear now is not confusion, it is not hesitation, it is not regret. It is a boundary, a final one. I severed the version of myself that needed to be believed, that needed to be approved, that needed to be seen as reasonable. That version was obedient. That version was exposed. That version was easy to underestimate. I buried them quietly. No ceremony. No apology. No explanation. I am not required to walk you through my transformation. I am not obligated to narrate my growth. I am not responsible for your inability to keep up. If my silence unsettles you, good. If my refusal to explain offends you, better. Because that reaction tells me everything. Those who deserve answers never demand them. Those who respect power recognize it without instruction. And those who panic when explanations disappear were never entitled to them in the first place. I am not disappearing. I am not hiding. I am standing exactly where I am, unchanged in posture, unmoved in purpose. What changed is your access. What changed is your influence. What changed is your illusion of relevance. You want to know why I moved the way I did, why I stopped responding, why I didn't clarify, why I didn't defend myself. Here is the only truth you get. I didn't need to. The moment I stopped explaining was the moment I realized my results spoke louder than your opinions ever could. I don't correct lies about me anymore. I let them rot on the tongues that speak them. I don't chase misunderstandings. I let them expose the intelligence of the ones who hold them. I don't fear being misread. I fear being reduced, and I will never allow that again. This is not bitterness. This is discipline. This is what happens when someone survives long enough to understand the cost of being accessible. I have paid that cost, in trust, in time, in bloodless betrayals that still scar, no more. From this moment forward, my actions will arrive without explanation. My decisions will land without footnotes. My boundaries will exist without justification. You will feel the consequences before you ever understand the reason. And that is intentional. The old me wanted agreement. The old me wanted alignment. The old me wanted acknowledgement. This version wants none of that. This version wants outcomes. If you stand beside me, you will feel the direction. If you stand against me, you will feel the pressure. If you stand confused, you will be left there. Because I am no longer slowing my ascent to explain gravity to those who refuse to look up. I have nothing left to clarify, nothing left to prove, nothing left to soften. My silence is not an invitation. It is a verdict. Read it however you want. Misinterpret it if you need to, fear it if you must. But do not ask me to explain it. That chapter is closed, sealed, buried beneath the version of me that needed your understanding to survive. I do not need it anymore. I know who I am. I know what I am doing. I know where this ends. And I will arrive there without announcing myself, without clarifying my steps, without offering a single reason to anyone watching from the outside. This is the final severing. Final boundary, the final silence. You will never hear my explanation again, and that is exactly how power sounds. This is my silence. This is my throne, this silence you hear. It is not absence. It is not emptiness. It is not hesitation. It is dominion. Every word I did not speak was a brick in the foundation of power. Every glance I withheld, every reaction I denied, built walls around me that no one could breach. This is my silence. This is my throne. I do not need a crown. I do not need applause. I do not need validation. I need only this quiet authority, this unshakable stillness that whispers, I am here, I am complete, I am sovereign. I sit upon it now, a king without a crown, a ruler of truths unseen, a master of the invisible empire I carved from patience and restraint. They thought power was measured by noise, by declarations, by proofs laid bare for judgment. They were wrong. I have learned that silence commands more than words ever could. Silence is the weight of inevitability. Silence is the steel in the spine of the unshakable. Silence is the echo that others will chase, the echo that betrays them before they even act. Look at them, scrambling, fumbling, chasing shadows of meaning that were never mine to give. This is the true throne, not a seat of gold, but a realm of certainty. A fortress built from the refusal to bend, to explain, to negotiate the essence of who I am. Every eye that tries to pierce this quiet finds only reflection. Not a reflection of weakness, but of their own lack of mastery. Not a reflection of who I am, but of who they could never be. I do not bow, I do not shift, I do not soften, I exist. And in existing I command. Hear it clearly, this throne is not inherited, this throne is seized. Seized from doubt, from expectation, from the world that tried to tell me I was too small, too soft, too broken to claim it. I claimed it anyway. Each silence a scepter, each pause a decree. Each refusal to react a law written in shadow, binding the hearts of those who would oppose me. I have sat long in the stillness. I have endured the whispers, the mockery, the invisible hands trying to lift me from my seat. I have felt the weight of disapproval, and I carried it like armor, knowing every insult, every doubt, every dismissal was a testament to the fear I inspired. For silence is a language. It is more precise than words, more lethal than explanations, more enduring than validation. I speak only when necessary. I act only when decisive. Everything else, the waiting, the watching, the quiet, is power in its purest form. Do you see it? Do you understand the throne upon which I sit? It is not a gift. It is not recognition. It is conquest. I have conquered the need to justify myself. I have conquered the compulsion to be understood. I have conquered the fear of being alone at the peak, because I realized long ago that power lives in solitude, and in that solitude all clarity is born. This is why I will not speak unless I choose. This is why I will not explain unless I decree. This is why they will always misunderstand and always underestimate until the consequences arrive. For a king without crown rules differently. He rules not by ceremony, not by decree, not by show. He rules by presence, by intention, by the unyielding gravity of knowing exactly who he is. I have walked through fire. I have faced betrayal. I have felt every hand of doubt that tried to push me down, and yet here I sit, my throne unshaken, my silence unbroken. Those who demanded explanations now speak in guesses. Those who sought to rattle me now tremble in uncertainty. Those who watched for cracks now search for shadows. This is the apex of dominance, not the loudest in the room, not the fiercest in battle, not the most celebrated, but the unmovable, the unseen force, the silent ruler. Every pause I take is a lesson, every still moment is a mirror for their fear. Every refusal to react is a statement of inevitability. I am not performing, I am not pretending, I am absolute. I am the calm that precedes the storm. I am the shadow that follows every misstep. I am the silence that swallows arrogance. And I sit here and I wait. I wait for them to learn that power is not always loud, that dominance is not always visible, that respect is not always begged. I built this throne in the absence of applause. I forged it in the fires of doubt. I carved it from every eye that watched and wanted more than I was willing to give. This is my throne, not a chair of velvet, not a crown of gold, not a kingdom marked by borders or subjects. It is the sovereignty of self, the realm of clarity, the empire of inevitability. Look at me. Look at this stillness. Look at this unshakable quiet. This is control. This is supremacy. This is mastery. You cannot touch it. You cannot claim it. You cannot enter it unless invited, and I invite no one. And when they finally realize that this throne exists only because I will it, only because I endure, only because I refuse to collapse into expectation, it will be too late. For they will have learned what I have known all along. Power does not come from crowns. Power does not come from applause. Power does not come from recognition. Power comes from the refusal to diminish yourself for the comfort of others. And so I sit and I endure and I conquer silently. This throne will outlast them. This silence will outlast their noise. This presence will outlast their doubts. I am here. I am unbroken. I am unbent. This is my silence. This is my throne, and it is eternal. I took the power back, listen carefully, not because I'm raising my voice, not because I'm demanding your attention, but because this is the last time I will ever explain myself. I didn't wake up powerful. I was not crowned. I was not chosen. I was pressed, ignored, doubted, cut down until there was nothing left to take. And that's when it happened, not in a moment of rage, not in a scream, not in a breakdown, but in silence. I realized something they never taught us. Power is not given to those who ask politely. Power is not handed to those who explain their pain well enough. Power is not awarded to those who beg to be understood. Power belongs to the one who no longer needs permission. For years, I explained myself. I justified my choices. I softened my edges so others wouldn't feel threatened. I diluted my truth so I could be tolerated, and all it did was teach them how to doubt me, so I stopped. I stopped explaining why I was quiet. I stopped explaining why I changed. I stopped explaining why I no longer reacted the way they expected. And something terrifying happened. They leaned in. Because when you stop explaining, people are forced to listen to what remains. And what remained was certainty. I didn't become louder, I became heavier. Every word carried consequence. Every pause carried warning. They used to question me, now they study me. They used to mock me, now they watch their tone. They used to think I was harmless, now they're careful. That's when I knew. I didn't lose myself in the silence. I found myself there. I found the part of me that didn't flinch, didn't chase approval, didn't bend to comfort the fragile egos around me. I found the part of me that understood this truth. You don't need to be liked to be powerful. You don't need to be understood to be dangerous. You don't need permission to become inevitable. Look at your life. How much of your energy was wasted explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you? How many times did you shrink your ambition so someone else wouldn't feel small? How many times did you apologize for the very fire that kept you alive? I did it too, until I didn't, because one day I understood something irreversible. The moment you stop explaining, you take control of the narrative. Silence doesn't make you weak, it makes you unreadable, and unreadable people are never powerless. They don't know your next move, they don't know your limits, they don't know where you end. And that uncertainty terrifies them. I didn't take power by force, I took it by withdrawal. I withdrew my justifications, I withdrew my need to be validated, I withdrew my emotional labor from people who never earned it. And in that vacuum, power rushed in, because power hates emptiness. And I finally stopped filling space with apologies. Now when I speak, it's not to convince, it's to conclude. Now when I act, it's not to prove, it's to decide. Now when I walk away, it's not defeat, it's judgment. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. This is what happens when someone survives long enough to stop asking the world for permission to exist loudly. I didn't harden, I clarified. I didn't become cruel, I became precise. I didn't lose empathy, I stopped bleeding it for free. And no, this isn't rage. Rage is loud, rage is chaotic, rage burns out. This is inevitability. This is the calm of someone who knows exactly who they are and no longer needs witnesses. They will talk. Let them. They will speculate. Let them. They will try to rewrite your silence into guilt, weakness, or fear. Let them, because while they're guessing, you're moving. While they're analyzing, you're building. While they're waiting for an explanation, you're already gone. I didn't take the power back by fighting them. I took it back by refusing to explain myself to people who never had authority over me to begin with. And here is the truth they won't admit out loud. The world listens differently when you stop asking it to understand you. So this is my final declaration. I stopped explaining, and the world had no choice but to listen.